2 maces of mock strawberry, 1 tael 6 maces of sacred bamboo, 4 maces of oleander. Qin Mu brought Hu Linger to the treasury and handed up the prescription to buy the medicinal ingredients he needed. He then informed Hu Linger, "This time I'm going to create a drug called Lost Fragrance, which is a kind of anesthetic. Grandpa Apothecary had once used it to knock out a flood dragon. That bull may be strong, but this can definitely knock it out. However, creating this drug requires a special pill furnace, and no negligence can be tolerated." Hu Linger asked curiously, "Why is that so? The fragrance that this drug gives off can even knock out a flood dragon, let alone the apothecary that's making it?" Qin Mu smiled. "If the pill furnace isn't sealed up, the fragrance would travel out after the drug is done. I'm afraid to even great divine arts practitioners of celestial being realm would fall head first if they happen to stand in the path where the fragrance is carried through. I don't have this kind of sealed pill furnace, so I need to borrow one from Hall of Supreme Healing." Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. "Little divine physician, where are you going?" Qin Mu looked towards the source of the voice and smiled. "So it's Imperial Physician Chu." "That's right, you're a directorate. I need to call your teacher Chu." Imperial Physician Chu immediately said, "Don't say it this way, I'm too ashamed. Little divine physician, I have a lecture this afternoon and we'll be talking about medicinal knowledge with the scholars. Since you're a divine physician, why don't you substitute me to give a lecture?" Qin Mu broke out in laughter and said, "I'm only a student, how can I give a lecture? Furthermore, I still have something to do during the afternoon lesson and might not be able to attend. I plan to refine a furnace of drug which would be used in the afternoon." Imperial Physician was slightly disappointed, but his eyes suddenly lit up. "You are refining pills?" Qin Mu smiled. "It can't be considered refining pills, it's just refining drugs." Imperial Physician Chu's gaze twinkled. "Little divine physician, may I observe?" Qin Mu hesitated for a moment and nodded his head. "I plan to borrow the pill furnace in Hall of Supreme Healing, and if you want to observe, we can go together." Imperial Physician Chu was greatly delighted and smiled. "Little divine physician, you can go ahead to Hall of Supreme Healing first, and I'll be back fast." After he had finished saying, he went off like the wind. Qin Mu walked over to Hall of Supreme Healing, and before he even reached the front of the hall, Imperial Physician Chu was already waiting for him in front of the hall. Other than him, there were also Imperial Physician Yu, and the rest of the Imperial Physician Bureau. They all wore an expression of excitement. Qin Mu was bewildered. He had only wanted to refine an ordinary anesthetic. Was there a need to muster all the Imperial Physicians? "Little divine physician, quick!" The few Imperial Physicians hurried him as they babbled on. "Do you need to activate the underground fire great furnace? We can be your assistants. What medicinal ingredients are you using? What is the order of the medicinal ingredients? When should we be gentle and when should we be fierce? When you execute the hand techniques, how should the vital qi circulate?" Qin Mu walked into Hall of Supreme Healing along with them and saw a huge great furnace directly. The number of pills that this pill furnace can refine might take one at least 2 to 3 years to eat them up. This should be a furnace of military use or to refine some world-shaking spirit pills. Other than that, there were other pill furnaces of all sizes, and there were rune formations under these pill furnaces which connected to the underground fire that was 10,000 yards beneath the grounds. When the underground fire was drawn out, it could be used to refine pills. "Is there a sealed furnace?" Qin Mu inquired. "Little divine physician, over here." Imperial Physician Yu quickly led him to a stone furnace in Hall of Supreme Healing and smiled. "This furnace is the sealed furnace. Little divine physician can check if it's usable." Qin Mu's eyes lit up and saw that this stone furnace was directly carved out of jade and stone. The top and bottom were emptied out with 8 divinatory trigrams and 5 elements situated on the inside. The furnace had no air vents, and it could be made airtight by closing the top and bottom together and giving a turn. Even if the pill exploded in the furnace, it wouldn't be able to break open this pill furnace. Usable. Qin Mu lifted open the furnace and inspected it thoroughly before placing the herbs according to the order in the square boxes of the 8 divinatory trigrams and 5 elements. The square boxes of these 8 divinatory trigrams and 5 elements all had their own sequences and would open up when they reached a certain timing. This way, the medicinal ingredients in the square boxes would fall into the furnace and there would be no need to open up the pill furnace to throw the herbs in. He placed the herbs and immediately gave a clap with his palms, drawing out the underground fire from the rune formation on the ground, calcining the stone furnace. Hu Ling'er had no interest in refining drugs, thus she started to look around. Meanwhile, the old and white-haired imperial physicians gathered around to observe with great interest, unable to take their eyes off. Imperial physician Yu saw Qin Mu's hand technique and his eyes lit up while he exclaimed in admiration. This hand technique had really reached perfection and is unimaginably good. Little divine physician, why does your hand technique require to dot 13 marks consecutively? Qin Mu replied, purple pellet stone is a precious stone and the medicinal properties are concealed inside the precious stone. It's much harder to extract its medicinal properties out, therefore, I had to dot 13 marks to be able to extract out its medicinal properties. My cultivation is slightly weaker, and if teachers' cultivations are dense, there's no need to have 13 marks. As long as you extract out the medicinal properties, you can stop. The few old imperial physicians nodded their heads and immediately noted down, as Qin Mu refined the drug and conversed with them at the same time. It was just that the few old imperial physicians had a lot of questions, thus he asked very little, and was always explaining the medicinal properties and pill refinement techniques to these old imperial physicians. This is the dragon and tiger mutual helping hand, am I right? The expression of imperial physician Chu suddenly changed and cried out, a hand technique that was already long lost. The other three imperial physicians revealed an astonished expression, and they stared intensely at Qin Mu's palms, which were moving up and down, trying to memorize Qin Mu's hand technique. The white-haired imperial physician Yu muttered, the dragon and tiger mutual helping hand has been lost for 200 years. Never would I expect to see this legendary pill refinement hand technique from little divine physician. Am I dreaming? If all of you want to learn it, I can teach you when I'm free, but recently I don't have the time. Qin Mu had now reached the crucial part of refining the drug, and he couldn't be distracted. Dragon and tiger mutual helping hand was only one of the few hundreds hand techniques apothecary had taught him, and it wasn't really special. He felt that it wasn't much imparting it out. The most important point of pill refinement was to be proficient in medicinal knowledge. Hand techniques and everything else was just supplementary. Be that as it may, hand techniques were, however, of utmost importance to these imperial physicians. Other than hand techniques, there were also prescriptions, which were the long-sought treasures of countless of people studying medicine. If they got their hands on a solitary prescription, they would definitely view it as a precious treasure and not tell others easily. This was different from what apothecary had taught Qin Mu. Apothecary absolutely didn't believe in prescriptions and hand techniques. What he taught most to Qin Mu was medicinal knowledge. He had yet thought before how powerful the things apothecary had taught him were, and always felt they were ordinary things. Therefore the astonishment of these imperial physicians made him felt unfathomable. At this moment, Qin Mu had already prepared to collect the drug, and his hand techniques became faster and faster, dazzling everyone's eyes. In just a short moment, the few imperial physicians saw a dozen kinds of long-lost hand techniques that were even complicated than dragon and tiger mutual helping hand. As the many hand techniques flashed by, every hand technique brought around different forms of the underground fire's transformations. Before the few imperial physicians could even note them down, Qin Mu had already pulled back his hands and waited silently beside the stone furnace. When the stone furnace had cooled down, Qin Mu's vital qi suddenly transformed into black tortoise vital qi, and his palms became cooler and cooler. Pressing his palms onto the stone furnace, a layer of frost soon formed on the walls of the furnace. A moment passed and Qin Mu made the few imperial physicians, as well as Hu Ling'er, fall back. He then held his breath and carefully opened up the stone furnace. At the bottom of the furnace there was a thin layer of pink fog. Qin Mu used one hand to execute black tortoise vital qi, to cool down this fog, while his other hand took out a small jade bottle. His vital qi transformed into a guiding method in the bottle, and drew the fog at the bottom of the furnace into the jade bottle. He immediately tightened the bottle cap, and he still wasn't at ease. He then used black tortoise vital qi to transform into a lump of black ice, which sealed the mouth of the bottle before giving out a sigh of relief. I have refined the drug I needed. Qin Mu thanked the few imperial physicians and smiled. Teachers, I still have matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you. As for the lesson in the afternoon, imperial physician Yu smiled. Just do what you have to do. From today onwards there's no need for you to come for lessons if you are busy. If you have time, it will be enough if you can frequently come over to give us old men a few lessons and refine some pills." Qin Mu bid farewell and left. Just as he had left, the few old imperial physicians immediately came together. Imperial physician Yu had smiles of exultation and asked, "Everyone, did you note down all the medicinal ingredients?" Imperial physician Yu tremblingly replied, "How could he hide it from us? I just need to sniff the smell and I knew which medicinal ingredients they were. How much maces and tails also can't be hidden from my nose. How about the medicine formulation and the order of the 8 divinatory trigrams and 5 elements?" Imperial physician Chu smiled. "Don't worry, I've noted them down. How about the hand techniques?" The few old men smiled together. "We have all memorized some, and by putting them together, we can restore his hand techniques." Imperial physician Chu hesitated for a moment and said, "However, when he was collecting the medicine, he asked us to stand far away, so I didn't note down the method he used to collect the medicine. Furthermore, we have no idea what medicine he refined, and if we refine it without careful consideration, collecting the medicine is an easy feat and won't be too troublesome. As for what medicine is it, we'll know it when we take a sniff after refining it out. The medicine that little divine physician has refined out would definitely be extraordinary." The few old imperial physicians were in high spirits. Imperial physician Yu immediately went to the treasury to grab the medicinal ingredients while the remaining old men washed the stone furnace, waiting for Imperial physician Yu to return. When he had returned, they immediately placed the medicinal ingredients into the square boxes of the 8 divinatory trigrams and 5 elements according to the sequence. The few old imperial physicians supported one another and drew out the underground fire. Each one of them executed one or more kinds of hand techniques as they surrounded the stone furnace to refine the medicine. Not long later, many scholars had come to Hall of Supreme Healing for the lecture. It was just that the few old imperial physicians had reached the crucial timing in refining the medicine, so they had no time to bother about it. During these few days, Imperial College was first blocked by Daozi of Dao Sect, and then by Fozi of Great Thunderclap Monastery, resulting in many people getting injured. This made the scholars of Imperial College realize the importance of Hall of Supreme Healing. Now that Hall of Supreme Healing was giving a lecture, they naturally had to come and attend. All the scholars couldn't help exclaiming in admiration endlessly when they saw the unpredictable movements of these imperial physicians' hand techniques, which were reaching perfection. Imperial physician Yu and the rest surrounded the stone furnace and continuously moved their feet, weaving past each other. They were like a few old butterflies fluttering to and fro around the furnace fire, and indeed had divine poise and sage-like features. Suddenly the elders stopped and they pulled back their hands, adjusting their breath while waiting for the stone furnace to cool down. Reaching this step, the few old imperial physicians were all slightly hesitant. Imperial physician Chu placed his hand on the stone furnace and said, "It seems like this is the hand technique." His hand pressed on it like this. Imperial physician smiled. "It's okay if we don't succeed. We'll just have to refine it once more. Let us open the furnace." Imperial physician Yu went forward and lifted up the furnace lid. A fragrance instantly assailed his nose and he couldn't help smiling. "How fra triple ant." Thud. Imperial physician Yu collapsed onto the ground with a queer smile still hanging on his face. The smile was like a flower which had half bloomed as he only in time to smile halfway. Thud thud thud. Imperial physician Yu also had smiles on their faces as they collapsed backward. Not far away, the scholars who were surrounding to observe all cried out in astonishment. Some of them wanted to go save people while some wanted to escape. Suddenly all the scholars felt as if their 4 limbs had vanished and they collapsed onto the floor one after another. They not only felt their 4 limbs vanishing, even their eyes, nose, ears, and even head had vanished without a trace. Even their spirit embryos had suddenly become paralyzed and couldn't move. Their vital chi had also become rigid. The people in Hall of Supreme Healing are poisoned. Some scholars passing by outside the hall and immediately noticed the situation inside Hall of Supreme Healing. One of them immediately rushed out and shouted loudly, "I'll go call the directorates, the rest of you go in and save them." The other 2 scholars immediately rushed into the hall, and when they smelled the fragrance, they collapsed. Not long later, Monk Fa Qing from Hall of Azure Yang brought a few monks over and barged into the hall, shouting, "Quickly save! Plop plop! The few monks collapsed one after another. Monk Fa Qing had a stronger cultivation after all, so he managed to turn and leave. When he reached the entrance of the hall, he finally couldn't withstand it any longer and collapsed outside the entrance of the hall. Monk Fa Qing is also poisoned. A few scholars came forward hurriedly to save Monk Fa Qing, when they suddenly smelled a fragrance and also collapsed one after another. When the scholars around saw the situation, they called for help while rushing over, and before they could reach them, they all collapsed with a thud on the ground without any warning. Meanwhile, Scholars' Residence, Divine Arts Residence, and Royalties Park had also received the news and hurried over. The directorates of the other halls also turned out to save people. In front of the mountain gate, some scholars who heard about this unforeseen had to put fighting foes aside and rushed up to save their fellow students. Chancellor Ba Shan also received the news and immediately flew to the front of Hall of Supreme Healing, only to see a few hundred scholars and directorates lying in front of Hall of Supreme Healing. The fragrance of lost fragrance had already spread out from Hall of Supreme Healing and diffused outside the hall. Daoist Ling Yun and the rest of the directorates were standing not far away, and their expressions changed hugely. Suddenly Daoist Shou Feng from Hall of Array Element moved forward and caught the wind with both his sleeves. This poison is extremely powerful, and it's best to disperse this poisonous gas to save people. Whoosh! 2 gales burst forth from his sleeves and blew toward Hall of Supreme Healing. Chancellor Ba Shan's expression changed hugely and shouted sternly, "Don't blow!" Before Daoist Shou Feng could react over, the heavy fragrance was blown out of the huge hall and spread out. Chancellor Ba Shan shouted again, "Hold your breath!" However, it was already too late. The fragrance of lost fragrance had dispersed in all directions and scholars collapsed on the ground one after another with stiff bodies. Meanwhile, since the directorate's cultivation was dense, they only felt their limbs turning numb. Their legs turned soft, their vital qi also turned lazy, and they were unable to move. Chancellor Ba Shan had the foresight, and his cultivation was extremely high. When he took a sniff of the fragrance, he immediately used his dense vital spirit to force the fragrance out of the body. Looking around, he saw waves after waves of scholars collapsing. Crap! Is this the end of Imperial College? A chilling sorrow spread across his heart, and this fragrance was probably going to spread throughout the entire Imperial College. Those who couldn't be paralyzed were only a mere 10 to 20 people. These people had the cultivation of celestial being realm and above, so they were able to force the strange fragrance out of their bodies. Imperial College was the #1 sacred ground in the whole world now, and people here were all going to be knocked out by this strange fragrance. Even if it wasn't the end, it was not much different from it. What kind of poison did these old scoundrels from Hall of Supreme Healing refine out this time? He didn't know that lost fragrance wasn't a poison and was just a kind of anesthetic. After 2 to 4 hours, the medicinal energy of the anesthetic would subside and not harm anyone. At this moment, a bottle gourd suddenly rose into the sky, and with the mouth of the bottle gourd facing downwards, a terrifying suction came from it. Sucking downwards from the top of the mountain to the bottom, the fragrance spread out was sucked into the bottle gourd along with the air. Strong gales were raised throughout the mountain, and soon the strange fragrance had vanished. Chancellor Ba Shan gave a sigh of relief. Luckily there's Grand Chancellor and it didn't engulf the entire mountain. However, these people are probably... Tears welled up in his tiger eyes as he looked at the countless numbers of corpses in front of Hall of Supreme Healing. Suddenly a chuckle sounded beside his ears. "Ba Shan, why are you crying when they are not dead?" Chancellor Ba Shan was stunned and hurriedly went forward to test the breath of the corpse, which was indeed strong. The young patriarch came to his side and looked around with a frown. "This looks like the hand of Poison King. That's it, I know who did this. This little scoundrel, getting more and more out of control." Chancellor Ba Shan hesitated for a moment. "Grand Chancellor, I've heard it was a few imperial physicians who had an accident while refining a medicine." The young patriarch sneered. "The few imperial physicians from Hall of Supreme Healing aren't able to refine out such strong anesthetic. It must be that little brat who refined medicine in the hall and caused an accident, paralyzing himself and even the scholars in the whole institution." Just as he had said this, his eyes suddenly opened wide as he stared at a close place with fixed eyes. Chancellor Ba Shan was puzzled and he followed his gaze, causing his eyes to open wide as well. They only saw a young scholar winding around Hall of Supreme Learning as he came back from the rear mountain. Both of his hands were dragging an incomparably sturdy and huge green bull. That green bull was also paralyzed and its 4 hooves were tied up together. With its 4 legs facing the sky, it got dragged along by that youth. Meanwhile, there was also a pure white little fox that had no impurities on its fur sitting on top of the bull's hooves. The young scholar saw the ground that was riddled with corpses and was slightly stunned. When he saw Chancellor Ba Shan and the young patriarch, his face hugely changed and immediately threw away the green bull, grabbing the fox to run away. "My little bull." Chancellor Ba Shan immediately rushed over to catch the paralyzed green bull with a sympathetic expression. He then shouted angrily, "Rascal, you knocked out my mount. I swear that I'll not let you off." Before Qin Mu could run far away, he felt his collar tightened as he got grabbed by the young patriarch. The scenery before his eyes rapidly changed, and the next moment he had appeared in front of Hall of Supreme Healing, standing in the middle of the ground filled with corpses. Qin Mu became well-behaved and lowered his head to look at the white fox beside him. The white fox was also well-behaved as she looked at her own furry front paws. The young patriarch smiled from extremely anger as he pointed at the corpses on the ground, speechless for quite a while. "Stand at the corner of the wall," the young patriarch shouted after holding himself back for quite some time. Qin Mu and Hu Linger walked over to the corner of Hall of Supreme Healing, lowering their heads as they stood. The young patriarch had a grim expression as he walked to and fro in front of the human and the fox with his hands behind his back. He suddenly shouted, "Who planted the poison?" Qin Mu immediately replied, "That bull was paralyzed by me. As for the scholars and chancellors, I've no idea." The young patriarch asked with a solemn face, "How to cure it?" Qin Mu replied honestly, "There's no need to cure them. You just need to wait for a moment and they will recover." The young patriarch snorted coldly and raised his finger to scold. "How many days have you been here since you entered Imperial College? And you have already turned the whole Imperial College upside down. Almost all the scholars of Scholars' Residence have been beaten by you. And almost all the houses in Scholars' Residence have been torn down by you, planting heads in walls and planting humans in the ground. Do you think I didn't know? You had struck Directorate Ling Yun down to the dust in front the Emperor. And now you sedated the mount of Chancellor Ba Shan, not mentioning how you paralyzed Hall of Supreme Healing. You had almost paralyzed all the people in this Imperial College. What's your next step going to be? To knock out everyone in the capital city?" Qin Mu gave it some thought and scratched his head. How big would the pill furnace have to be able to refine out so much lost fragrance? What I mean is, the lost fragrance that has knocked out all these scholars and chancellors was definitely not refined by me. The young patriarch was speechless from anger. "Then explain yourself, why did you paralyze Chancellor Ba Shan's mount?" Chancellor Ba Shan walked over and asked curiously, "That's right, why did you paralyze my bull?" Qin Mu blinked his eyes innocently and said, "I was fooling around with it. I plan to steal the vegetables from your vegetable garden. I have been eating too much oily food these few days, therefore I would like to have a change of tastes." Chancellor Ba Shan was suspicious and asked, "After you knocked out my bull, why didn't you go steal the vegetables and instead carried it and ran? Did you fancy the vegetables in my vegetable garden, or my bull?" "This." Qin Mu lowered his head to look at the little fox standing with him in the corner. The little fox also couldn't think of an excuse. Ba Shan became angry. "No more excuse? How should I punish you, Grand Chancellor? He has just come up the mountain and he already dared to eat my bull and even planted poison, nearly harming all the scholars in Imperial College. This boy can't be allowed to stay." The young patriarch gave a cough and said softly, "Ba Shan, he is the disciple of Poison King." Chancellor Ba Shan jumped in shock. "Poison King? Which Poison King?" The young patriarch spoke softly. "Which Poison King could it be? Of course it's Jade-Face Poison King. He's the Flower Alley divine physician that has cured Empress Dowager. He pretty good in curing illnesses to save people, and his poison isn't much inferior to Fu Yuanqing from Imperial Preceptor's Manor." Chancellor Ba Shan suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold and immediately moved far away from Qin Mu with a chuckle. "Since my bull is fine, I'll let the matter drop. Grand Chancellor, I'll leave this to you." The young patriarch's head started to ache. Qin Mu was good in everything, yet he was also good in tormenting people. Village chief and the rest had groomed him very well, and Patriarch was very pleased. It was fine he tormented Imperial College, but if by any chance he tormented Heavenly Devil Cult too when he went to Heavenly Devil Cult in the future, it would be extremely terrifying. Suddenly the young Patriarch gave a smile and looked kindly at him. I still have 2 more months before I retire. Please don't create any more trouble. Can you be contented with your lot for just these 2 months? Qin Mu nodded his head and argued, I really didn't refine out the lost fragrance which has paralyzed Imperial College. The young Patriarch beamed. Who was the one who passed around the prescription? Qin Mu lowered his head. The young Patriarch called Chancellor Ba Shan over. Ba Shan, come over. Chancellor Ba Shan went forward and the young Patriarch smiled. Watch him attentively for these 2 months. When I retire 2 months later, you can relax. What Grand Chancellor means is to... Chancellor Ba Shan moved forward and raised his hand to do a downwards cutting motion while giving off an inquiring expression. The young Patriarch said with a smile that was yet not a smile, You think too much. He's a divine physician who has cured Empress Dowager's illness. Furthermore, with just an anesthetic, he could paralyze the whole mountain. If you kill him, I'll kill you. So it was him. Chancellor Ba Shan had scales fall from his eyes and said, I've long heard about the divine physician that has come to the capital city. Never would I expect him to be this boy. It's not impossible for me to watch him, though I have a feral temper and I'm not used to staying on the mountain. The young Patriarch smiled. Just bring him wherever you go. Chancellor Ba Shan understood. The young Patriarch let out a murky breath and said, Don't just stand there. Carry out the scholars who had been knocked out with the Chancellor and let them breathe in fresh air. Qin Mu and Chancellor Ba Shan immediately went into Hall of Supreme Healing and carried everyone out. More than half of the scholars in Imperial College were knocked out, and there were also quite a few directorates who had been knocked out as well. When the medicinal properties of lost fragrance had subsided, everyone regained consciousness one after another, though they still felt heavy in their heads and couldn't completely recover in a short while. The few old Imperial physicians from Hall of Supreme Healing apologized to everyone and were ashamed. However, their respect for Qin Mu had risen even further. Only now did they know why Qin Mu had asked them to move back when he was collecting the drug. The medicinal energy of this lost fragrance was too powerful and Qin Mu was worried it might leak out. Therefore he had asked them to move further away. This resulted in them being unable to see the method Qin Mu had used to collect the drug, causing chaos. It was lucky that it was only an anesthetic. If it was a poison that killed with a sniff, the more than half of the future elites of Eternal Peace Empire would probably have died just like that. Right at this moment, someone suddenly cried out in astonishment. Fozi Foxian and Monk Jingming have left. The entire Imperial College broke out in a commotion and a directorate muttered. Could it be the scholar who had defeated Daozi made a move again? Qin Mu's heart slightly shook. Old Monk Jingming brought Foxian forward and they had the same aim as Dan Yongzi from Dao Sect. To block the gate for 3 days, to cut down Imperial College's might and to kill the hearts of the Eternal Peace Empire's people who were supportive. Yet now that 3 days wasn't up and Jingming had brought Foxian to leave, there was only one possibility left, which meant Fozi Foxian was defeated. I was clearly paralyzing the Green Bull in the rear mountain, and couldn't have run to the mountain gate to defeat Fozi Foxian. Qin Mu was at a loss. If it wasn't him who had defeated Fozi Foxian, then who was it? He remembered what Patriarch had said when he had met him at the straw hut. Back then there was a hidden meaning in Patriarch's words, which meant that other than him, there were also others who had the abilities in Imperial College to defeat Foxian. If Qin Mu wasn't going to do it, Patriarch would make that person do it. Furthermore, this scholar that had defeated Fozi Foxian had actually maintained a low profile like Qin Mu. When Qin Mu had defeated Daozi Lin Xian, he didn't mention it to any outsiders after that. This person actually took the chance when all the scholars and chancellors were paralyzed by lost fragrance to go down the mountain alone and defeat Foxian during this interval. At that time, other than Foxian and old monk Jingming, there was only that Dragon Qilin in front of the mountain gate. Even though Dragon Qilin could open his mouth to speak, he was a beast of few words and no information could be dug out from him, so he could forget about drawing facts out of him. Unless he could get Chancellor Ba Shan's mount for him to eat, only then could he be able to ask him who was that person. However, it would be difficult if he wanted to paralyze that green bull now. It's a good thing for Imperial College to have an expert that's on par with me. Qin Mu gave a slight smile and didn't bother to find out who it was, bringing Hu Linger back to Scholar's residence. Many people in Scholar's residence had already known that the Imperial physicians had gotten the prescription from him, which ended up knocking out almost all the scholars in Imperial College, thus they were all slightly fearful when they saw him. Suddenly a timid voice sounded out softly. "Senior brother Qin, is it you who have defeated that Foxen?" Qin Mu looked towards the source of the voice and saw the person who spoke was Si Yunxiang, the gentle and quiet girl who had managed to enter Imperial College along with him. This girl was always shy and Qin Mu had even teased her a few times, making her face turn bright red and at a loss to know what to do. Qin Mu shook his head. "Of course it isn't me. When that person defeated Foxen, I was caught by Grand Chancellor for a scolding. Sister Xiang, did you see that person who has defeated Foxi?" Si Yunxiang shook her head. "I was paralyzed by a fragrance just now and didn't know what had happened. Now I'm still feeling slightly giddy. I saw senior brother looking energetic and wasn't poisoned, so I had thought it was senior brother who had chased Foxen away." Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he smiled. "It really wasn't me. I would also like to know who was the one who had defeated Foxi." Si Yunxiang saw someone looking over and immediately returned to her courtyard, closing her door. Qin Mu took the chance to peek into her courtyard, but before he could clearly see anything, the door had already closed and Qin Mu could only return to his own residence. "There's a huge problem with this Si Yunxiang." He composed himself and said softly, "She didn't suffer from lost fragrance at all. The state of those who have suffered from lost fragrance wouldn't be like her. Lost fragrance is a kind of anesthetic, and those who suffered from this anesthetic would still feel out of sorts for the next 4 to 6 hours after waking up. She wasn't feeling out of sorts just now." Hu Linger replied, "Young master, Si Yunxiang wasn't among the scholars that were paralyzed in front of Hall of Supreme Healing." Qin Mu's heart slightly moved. After the young patriarch's scolding, he had wanted him to stay back to help look after these scholars and directorates. Qin Mu and the little fox both stayed there to help out, but the little fox began scampering around, planning to plunder the spoils of war. However, she was stopped by him. At that time, Hu Linger had seen all the faces of the people that were paralyzed. If she said Si Yunxiang wasn't among them, she really wasn't among them. She is indeed lying. Qin Mu blinked his eyes and said, "There's no reason for her to purposely run out from her residence to lie to me. In that case, she is actually trying to show off. She talking to me regarding Foxi's defeat means that she was trying to flaunt about this incident. The one who had defeated Foxi was her." Qin Mu suddenly recalled, why was the young patriarch so sure that there was someone in Imperial College who could defeat Foxi? Could he have known long ago that Si Yunxiang has this capability? How did the young patriarch know Si Yunxiang, a girl who had only become an Imperial scholar recently, so well? It was important to know that even Qin Mu, this young cult master, had to be tested numerous times by the young patriarch before his power and capability was affirmed. This meant that the young patriarch understood Si Yunxiang extremely well, and even far more than he understood Qin Mu. Meanwhile, this girl had the surname Si, and on top of that, having the bad habit of liking to show off. Granny sure knows how to have fun. Qin Mu said resentfully, "I'll not expose her for now, let's see what she's planning to do." He was about to close the door when Chancellor Ba Shan's voice sounded out. "Bulbul, carry my luggage over." "Yes, old master." Chancellor Ba Shan pushed open the door and walked into the residence. Behind him followed a sturdy bull which was carrying a huge luggage. This green bull had yet transformed completely. He was walking like a human, yet he still had the shape of a bull. He was the green bull that Qin Mu had paralyzed. "Which room am I staying in?" Chancellor Ba Shan asked Qin Mu. Qin Mu was stunned. Chancellor Ba Shan made himself at home instead as he laughed. "In that case, I'll take the west room." "Whoa, that's a lot of money. Scholar Qin, you're quite rich." "Bulbul, we have money now. Let's grab a bunch and go down the mountain to get some wine." "Is there wine to drink?" Hu Linger cheered and hopped over. She jumped and squatted on the bull's head with a smile. "I'll go with you." The green bull brought her out and asked, "You also drink? Do you know how to play the drinking game?" Chancellor Ba Shan placed his luggage down and tidied the room. After he was done with making the bed, He shot a glance at Qin Mu, who was still outside, and laughed. Grand Chancellor asked me to stick to you like a shadow, so I naturally have to stay with you to prevent you from causing trouble everywhere. Did you write the words on the door? Qin Mu nodded his head. Chancellor Ba Shan gave a forceful slap and praised. Well written. You got a good handwriting, which is atmospheric. You're much better than those guys from Art Saint Pavilion. I still don't understand what's the use of our Imperial College's Art Saint Pavilion. How can those guys have the impudence to collect their salaries from the Imperial Court? Oh? By the way, do you snore? Qin Mu shook his head. I snore. Chancellor Ba Shan continued. There are many directorates in our Imperial College that snore, especially Abasi Chio, that old nun. Her snore is world-shaking. Kiki, she can even vibrate a bull to death from 3 miles away. Luckily, this old nun doesn't sleep often and only meditate while sitting. If she sleeps, all of you scholars can forget about sleeping. Qin Mu was getting slightly impatient. This Chancellor Ba Shan seemed to have many words to say, and was even more talkative than Wei Yong. Chancellor Ba Shan talked for over an hour, and Qin Mu basically got to know a natural disposition, style of work and family properties of all the directorates of Imperial College's pavilions and halls of Sword, Fist, Spell, Three Yang, Supreme Healing, Art Saint, and etc. Especially those secretaries from Floor of Heavenly Records. Chancellor Ba Shan had disclosed all their secrets, like having an illegitimate child and the old nun having a tryst with her lover. This chancellor would say all kinds of trivial things out. The Green Bull and Hu Linger returned from the city drunkenly. The bull and the fox had gotten themselves quite high, calling each other brother and sister. They were so close as if they had come from the same womb, and this Green Bull had totally forgotten how Qin Mu had brought this fox to drug him. Chancellor Ba Shan immediately grabbed the wine jar and drank a few mouthfuls. With his head turning dizzy, he said, When I came back from outside a few days ago, I seem to have seen my master. You didn't expect it, right? I may be a chancellor, but I didn't graduate from Imperial College. I'm from the Battle Technique School and I have a master. I was invited over here by Imperial Preceptor to teach the scholars battle techniques. I had originally thought that he had died, but I didn't expect him to be alive. Chancellor Ba Shan drank a mouthful of wine and stared blankly. His legs are missing, but he could run very fast. I exerted all my power to chase him, yet I wasn't able to catch up. After that, I met a blind man who gave me a beating and asked me why was I following him. He was very unreasonable. He even wanted to have a poetry match with me. But I couldn't win him and master had disappeared. Qin Mu was stunned for a slight moment. A strong practitioner of the Battle Technique School without legs and a blind man who loved to have poetry matches? It seems like they are Grandpa Butcher and Grandpa Blind. When did they leave Great Ruins? Chancellor Ba Shan was dead drunk and began to spout nonsense. Qin Mu hesitated, as it would definitely seem out of the blue if he inquired about it. Green Bull, did you see the appearance of that blind man clearly? Qin Mu asked the Green Bull beside him. This Green Bull looked at Qin Mu somewhat timidly. It was evident that he still remembered how Qin Mu had paralyzed him. Qin Mu smiled. You're still bearing a grudge? You had given me a beating, yet I only paralyzed you and didn't beat you, so what grudge are you bearing? Have you ever seen such a good person that is magnanimous as me? Chancellor Ba Shan gave a drunk burp and had a weird expression. This youth from Great Ruins seemed to have some misunderstanding to the term good person. He said, Scholar Qin, not only did you paralyze him, you even wanted to eat him. It's natural for him to be wary. He still wanted to eat me? The Green Bull cried out in astonishment. Old master, you didn't mention this to me. You only said he had paralyzed me and didn't say he wanted to eat me. Hu Linger stood on top of the bull's horns while hugging a wine jar and said in a clear and loud voice, Brother Bull, haven't you heard before don't fight, won't make friends? The Green Bull retorted angrily, I've heard before don't fight, won't make friends, but I have never heard before don't eat, won't make friends. Chancellor Ba Shan's expression became even weirder. It was also obvious that this fox demon from Great Ruins had a misunderstanding to the phrase, don't fight, won't make friends. Who was the one who had trained this youth? He really is a scoundrel. Qin Mu didn't know what he was thinking about. Chancellor Ba Shan was drinking with the little fox and the Green Bull. However, he didn't like to drink, so he was cultivating on one side. Chancellor Ba Shan's pupils suddenly contracted and couldn't keep his eyes off the knife skills Qin Mu was executing. When Qin Mu had finished executing pig-slaughtering knife skills, Chancellor Ba Shan suddenly threw his wine gourd aside and pulled out his knives with open arms. Swing his knives in the courtyard, his voice carrying a great emotion. The golden knife adorned in white jade, with rays piercing into the night through the window. Man of 50 years yet nothing made. Carrying knife in 8 wilderness all alone. Carrying knife in 8 wilderness all alone. This was the 6th form of pig-slaughtering knife skills. His knives and Qin Mu's knives collided and a series of sparks burst forth. As both their knife skills clashed, Chancellor Ba Shan laughed out loudly. For over 4 to 5 decades, wind and rain cloud the sky to see nothing. As transient as a fleeting cloud, every cloud has a silver lining. Qin Mu executed every cloud has a silver lining to clash with his knives and recited, "Stop thinking of wanting to boast, after the crisis comes the people's hope. Looking around the sky and see, the whole journey taken would all be smoke." Both of them pulled back their knives with their backs facing each other, sheathing both the knives on their hands back on their backs. "Junior brother." Chancellor Ba Shan turned around to greet. Qin Mu bowed. "Senior brother." Both of them sat down and Chancellor Ba Shan asked about Butcher's body. Qin Mu told him, "Everything's fine. His lower body is missing, however. His cultivation is very high, therefore his hands allow him to scamper around as though he was flying." Chancellor Ba Shan was bewildered and asked, "Since you and I have the same master, why did you still learn the art of healing from Jade Face Poison King? Is Jade Face Poison King your master as well?" Qin Mu nodded his head. Although he didn't tell him, he still had other masters aside from apothecary and butcher. Chancellor Ba Shan stared into the air and suddenly said, "I know where the lower half of my master's body is." Back then, when he raised his knives at the heavens, his body had fallen from the sky and the lower half of his body seemed to have been grabbed away by a disciple of a certain sect. "Junior brother, since you learned the art of healing from Jade Face Poison King, your medical expertise should be brilliant. I will like to ask you, if I find the lower half of our master's body, can you reattach it?" Qin Mu hesitated for a moment and said, "If it was severed recently, I can. As long as I excite the activity in the body and use medicine that regenerates flesh and vitality, I can reattach the severed flesh, reconnect the severed tendons and reconstruct the broken bones. However, after such a long time, I'm afraid the lower half of his body is already long dead." Chancellor Ba Shan was disappointed, but he raised his spirits again. "Even so, I'll have to find the lower half of Master's body back." Qin Mu nodded his head and said, "It's best for senior brother to scout out which sect snatched it so as to not find the wrong sect." Chancellor Ba Shan rose up and left. He came back sometime later and said, "Master's body was picked up by someone over 200 years ago. I'm not sure if his body is still at that sect. I have ordered my men to go investigate, and when they find his body's whereabouts, we'll go get it back." Qin Mu let out a sigh. If the lower half of Butcher's body could really be found, it would still be a good thing no matter if it could be reattached or not. Butcher, having only the upper half of his body, didn't have much power left. If his lower body was snatched by someone, it should still be preserved. His power was extremely strong after all. As a strong practitioner of the battle technique school, it wasn't hard for him to cultivate to the condition where his corporeal body wouldn't spoil. Many senior monks who had achieved the Tao in Buddhism could manage to make their corporeal bodies not spoil. After they were dead, their bodies wouldn't rot or decompose, and were placed in the temples as corporeal body bodhisattvas for people to enshrine and worship. However, it was hard to achieve corporeal body not dying. Those corporeal body bodhisattvas in the temple were actually already dead. Corporeal body not dying was a level higher than corporeal body not spoiling. Only when the blood didn't coagulate, the body didn't turn stiff, the heart continued to beat, and the nervous system remained functional, could it be considered corporeal body not dying. Senior brother Ba Shan, do you know Grandpa Butcher's real name? Qin Mu was reminded of something and asked. Chancellor Ba Shan shook his head. I don't know. I only know people refer to him as Heaven Knife. As for what his original birth name is, nobody has any idea. Master had said, he had an enemy that could use spells to inflict harm to others just by knowing their names. Therefore he rarely revealed his name to others. Qin Mu was stunned. This seems a little like the methods of the grand shamans of Barbarian D Empire. Could it be that Butcher had offended a grand shaman of barbarian D Empire in the past? He quietened his heart down and continued to cultivate the 3 forms of sword skills that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had imparted onto him. Among the 3 forms of sword skills taught by Imperial Preceptor, he had already succeeded in cultivating Spiral Sword form, and it was difficult for him to have any further improvement. Thus he began to cultivate the other 2 forms of sword skills. Chancellor Ba Shan drank his wine watching on the side. He had wanted to give him some pointers on how to cultivate, but he didn't say a word after observing for a moment. He had also seen other scholars practicing swim sword form. There were some that were clumsy and some that were nimble. But in Qin Mu's hands, there were times where the few hundreds to thousands of sword chi of swim sword form were like swimming fishes. There were times where they were like startled swans, and there were also times they were like swimming dragons. His sword chi didn't have a fixed form and was ever changing. For one's fundamentals to be so solid and able to have so many changes, the person could only be Qin Mu in the entire Imperial College. Just this one move Qin Mu had practiced countless times, trying his best to unleash all his power in one move. The power of his swim sword form grew stronger and stronger, making Chancellor Ba Shan forget to drink his wine for quite a while. Qin Mu practiced it thousands of times before switching to practice drill sword form. He was similarly honing his fundamentals, trying his best to focus all his power in the sword to unleash its fullest potential. His hidden capabilities were not only in the sword move. As usual, Cripple's body motion, Butcher's knife skills, Old Ma's fist skills, Blind's god eyes, Deaf's painting skills, Mute's hammer skills were all means for him to unleash his power. After a long time, Qin Mu stopped and his body was covered in sweat. He took out his nature fragrance handkerchief to wipe his sweat. Chancellor Ba Shan suddenly asked, "Junior brother, are you the one who has chased Daozi and Fozi away?" Qin Mu adjusted his breath and didn't hide it from him. Daozi lost the fight by half a move. As for Fozi, I didn't manage to fight him. Chancellor Ba Shan let out a murky breath and muttered, "When I saw your sword skills just now, I guessed it was you. It's funny coming to think of it. Are you the one who shouted loudly that you had finally refined Vital Chi thread during Imperial Preceptor's lecture?" Qin Mu's face turned slightly red. Chancellor Ba Shan had a queer expression. "You only refined your chi into thread at that time? How had you managed to defeat Daoist Ling Yun before you refined your chi into thread?" Qin Mu pondered over the question and replied, "I gave a stab and he was defeated." Chancellor Ba Shan was speechless. "What do you mean you gave a stab and he was defeated?" Qin Mu scratched his head. "Senior brother, how about this? You use 5 elements realm to block my sword." Chancellor Ba Shan sealed his other divine treasures and shouted with a raging desire for battle, "I'm ready." On the side, Hu Linger and the Green Bull were so drunk that their eyes were all blurry. They were making a racket wanting to become sworn brother and sister. The little fox shot a glance at Qin Mu and Chancellor Ba Shan and burst into laughter. "Brother Bull, it's going to be tragic for your old master." The Green Bull uttered, "It wouldn't be tragic for my old master." Qin Mu swept up a firewood and used it as a sword, stabbing it out. Chancellor Ba Shan raised his hand to block and a loud boom rumbled out. The door of this residence which Qin Mu was staying in shattered into countless of pieces, and even a big chunk of the wall collapsed. Before the Green Bull could even finish what he was saying, he shut his mouth at once. Qin Mu took back his sword and anxiously ran over. Chancellor Ba Shan got up from the debris with a face full of dust. He unsealed his other divine treasures and chuckled. "I thought Daoist Ling Yun had been bribed. No wonder if it was me. I also couldn't have blocked it if I didn't have my guard up." He wasn't injured. The firewood which Qin Mu used to stab his chest was exploded into splinters from the vibration of his vital chi. Thus it wasn't able to hurt him. Many scholars and scholars' residents hurriedly ran out, and when they saw the door to Qin Mu's courtyard got torn down, they felt pleasure in their hearts. That abandoned person with the surname Qin dared to write words that insult us Eternal Peace Empire scholars on his door. Now he has gotten the worst of it, am I not right? Chancellor Ba Shan had personally come to tear down his door. Let's see how completely he was humiliated. Chancellor Ba Shan swept his gaze over all the scholars and waved his hands. "Everyone disperse, disperse. There's nothing interesting to see. I was just swapping pointers with Scholar Qin. He has really given the one with the surname Qin a beating." Everyone understood clearly as they looked at Qin Mu while rejoicing at his misfortune. What puzzled them was Qin Mu's body still looked fresh, and on the contrary, there was a lot of dust on Chancellor Bashan's body. It didn't look like Qin Mu got beaten, and on the contrary, Chancellor Bashan was the one who was in a sorry sight. Chancellor Bashan looked at the door and the collapsed wall with a slight headache. No wonder Grand Chancellor said you had almost torn down the entire scholar's residence. If you were to fight in scholar's residence, you wouldn't need much time to tear down the entire scholar's residence. You have extremely high abilities. However, it seems like there's something wrong with your technique. There's a weakness in your left shoulder. He didn't purposely lower his voice, and it was instantly heard by the scholars who had yet left, lighting all their eyes up. So his weakness is on his left shoulder. Chen Wanyun took in a deep breath. He had noticed that there were some astringent parts in Qin Mu's technique, but he was always unable to find the location of Qin Mu's weakness. Now it was finally made aware by Chancellor Bashan. Now my position of the big brother can be saved. He thought to himself, get the Ajab men over to fix this wall and door. Chancellor Bashan saw Chen Wanyun and called him over. Chen Wanyun immediately bowed. Teacher. Chancellor Bashan smiled at Qin Mu. There are not many scholars that I admire in Imperial College. Chen Wanyun is one of them, who is diligently taught by me. Junior brother. How do you see him? Qin Mu nodded his head and praised. No wonder senior brother Chen has such powerful abilities, so it turns out to be senior brother's teachings. Senior brother Chen is the big brother of scholar's residence. No matter whether his cultivation or his abilities, they have both reached extremely high standards. When he gets to divine arts residence, he will definitely shine. Senior brother, junior brother? Chen Wanyun was slightly at a loss. Chancellor Bashan chuckled. Junior brother, why are you calling him senior brother? Call him disciple nephew. If you call him senior brother, isn't that going to mess up our seniority? Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. Chancellor Bashan walked into the courtyard and continued. I have long noticed that by purely relying on directorates to teach scholars, it's easy to have many experts. However, it was also equally easy to hold up talents. There are too many people that the directorates have to teach. For one same move, some people can learn by seeing it once, while some have to learn tens and hundreds of times. However, the directorates have to treat all of them equally. Those that could learn it by seeing it once will have to learn it 100 times with those dumb ones. When the dumb ones finally master it, only then can they move on to learn other divine arts. This way, their advancements in cultivation are held up. Qin Mu and Chen Wanyun walked into the courtyard, and Chancellor Bashan threw a wine gourd over. I mentioned this to Grand Chancellor once and told him that Imperial College was suitable for teaching the talents 1 in 1,000 people, and not the talents that were 1 in 100,000 and 1 in a million. Thus Grand Chancellor allowed me to try. As a result, I had found Chen Wanyun and personally taught him for a period of time. He had worked hard as expected and became the big brother of scholars' residence for these few years. This shows that grooming a single person surpassed the teachings of Imperial College. Chen Wanyun is the kind of talent that's 1 in a million. So I see. Qin Mu frowned and said, if that's the case, what's the difference between Imperial College and sex? Chancellor Bashan sighed. Therefore, Grand Chancellor and Imperial Preceptor are brooding over this matter. Grand Chancellor is going to retire, so Imperial Preceptor is actually the one that's most anxious about this matter. Imperial Preceptor knows that Imperial College has its own disadvantages, so he had also taken a few disciples and taught them diligently. It's just that the number of talents that are held back by Imperial College shouldn't be a small number. Qin Mu was stumped for words. What Imperial Preceptor had to face was whether or not to negate his reform. But negating the reform proposed by himself was definitely not an option for him. Primary schools, colleges, and Imperial College had far surpassed the sex in the aspects of grooming talents. As long as they solved the difficult problem of grooming geniuses, they would surpass the sex in all aspects. How does the emperor teach the crown prince? When the crown prince was young, he had his junior protector, junior preceptor, junior tutor. When he grows up, he has his grand protector, grand preceptor, and grand tutor. These junior protector and grand protector are all existence of sect master and cult master level. Therefore, the crown prince who is groomed by this method has extremely strong abilities. I'm now trying to take on a few scholars and teach them techniques, skills, and divine arts in line with their abilities. Chancellor Bashan continued. What the Grand Chancellor desire is when I find the knack of it, I can be able to spread it. Grand Chancellor told us to choose scholars that were erudite and multi-talented from the scholars, and they were to be personally taught by the chancellors, separating them from the scholars who had an ordinary aptitude. Junior brother, you are the first imperial academician of our imperial college, Academician Qin. Qin Mu was slightly shocked. Imperial academician was the solution to the problem of being difficult to teach in line with the students' abilities. If Chancellor Ba Shan and the young patriarch could really solve it, they wouldn't need to rely on the power of Heavenly Devil Cult anymore when they faced the problem like Daozi and Fozi blocking the gate again. This time they had relied on the power of Heavenly Devil Cult to repel Daozi of Dao Sect and Fozi of Great Thunderclap Monastery. Qin Mu was the young cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, while Si Yunxiang was most likely Granny Si, who was the saintess and cult mistress of the previous generation. It could be said that Imperial College had suffered a crushing defeat. Chen Wanyun heard the conversation between them and felt very much awkward in his heart. Every time he mustered his courage to try to inquire about the doubts in his heart, he couldn't say it out. Finally, he couldn't resist it any longer and asked, "Teacher Ba Shan, what's going on with you calling him junior brother?" "Oh, you're talking about this?" Chancellor Ba Shan replied with a casual air. "He and I are from the same master, so he's my junior brother. You need to call him senior uncle." "Senior uncle?" Chen Wanyun was silent and asked after a while, "If my cultivation is stronger than him, do I still need to call him senior uncle?" Chancellor Ba Shan burst into laughter. "What are you thinking? You aren't his match. His ability is a level higher than yours. Do you know what's the meaning of a level higher? It means he's a chopstick higher than you. A fine line higher means a strand of hair higher. Now do you know how many dozen times is a level higher than a fine line higher? Furthermore, you won't be able to defeat him. But even if you're able to defeat him, you'll still have to call him senior uncle." Chen Wanyun gave a groan and mumbled, "How would we know if we don't have a fight?" "Don't fight, you'll lose." Chancellor Ba Shan smiled. "His ability is on the level of Daozi and Fozi." Qin Mu tugged the corner of his shirt and Chancellor Ba Shan immediately shut his mouth. He was the famous loudmouth in Imperial College and he could keep no secrets. Any incidents were all blurted out along with his fast speech. He revealed the position of the weakness in Qin Mu's technique just now, and now he almost said out that it was Qin Mu who had defeated Daozi Lin Xian. Chancellor Ba Shan looked at Qin Mu and stood up. "Grand Chancellor wants me to stick to you like a shadow, but he also has the wish for you to follow me as well. However, since you're my junior brother, you won't have to call me teacher. The lesson I'm giving is simple, to bring them out for an experience. However, I can't bring too many people out as it would be too eye-catching, and it would be hard for me to take care all of them. When I went out the last time, I had only brought Chen Wanyun with me. Since that I have to bring you out this time, I can at most bring another scholar." Chen Wanyun looked at him with an expectant look on his face. Chancellor Ba Shan knew what he was thinking and stood up to walk outside. He shook his head and said, "I can't bring you this time. I need to choose a few scholars with good aptitude and foundation to bring along with me to learn and cultivate. This is to validate if the academician proposed by Grand Chancellor works or not. These few people would become the current choices for being Imperial Academicians. Junior brother, go to floor of Heavenly Records to choose a few volumes of classics to bring on the journey. I'll teach you on the way." He left the courtyard to probably look for scholars with outstanding aptitudes. Qin Mu looked at Chen Wanyun and smiled. "Disciple nephew Chen." Chen Wanyun's face sank slightly and stood up. "Until the day I lose to you, I won't call you senior uncle." After he said this, he walked out of Qin Mu's courtyard. Qin Mu didn't mind it. He took a look at the little fox and the green bull and told them, "Both of you help me pack my luggage. I'm going to floor of Heavenly Records to choose a few divine arts." These two fellows were so drunk that they were shouting at each other to become sworn siblings, so he didn't know if they had heard him or not. Qin Mu grabbed his book tablet and walked out of the courtyard. Outside there were a few odd-job men who had come over and were planning to rebuild his courtyard and door. When he walked out from his courtyard, he walked towards the outside of Scholar's residence. At this moment, the doors to the courtyard suddenly opened and scholars started to walk out of their houses one after another. They all stood in the middle of the road and looked at him silently. Qin Mu looked backward and saw the doors of the courtyards behind him had also opened. There were also scholars walking out from their own courtyards and stood in the middle of the road. These scholars were mostly the people who had been beaten by him before. Some of them placed their sword cases beside their feet while some were already carrying them. Other than them, there were also some people whom he had never fought with before. Among them was Qin Yu, who had attended the examination with him, and some of the younger generations from a few other reputable families. In the entire scholar's residence, only Wei Yong, Si Yunxiang and 5 to 6 other people who did not walk out. You still want to fight once more? Qin Mu broke into laughter and walked forward. A scholar behind him sneered. Abandoned person, you don't dare to start from the back of the alley? Could it be that you're scared? Qin Mu stopped and turned back to look at that scholar. He seemed to be the only scholar who got beaten thrice by him, while the other scholars were only beaten twice by him. Only this scholar, who had a lot to say and kept calling him abandoned person, was carried by him to use his face as a brush before planting him into the ground, which could be considered to be beating him 3 times. It was hard for the scholar to hide his expression of excitement. Abandoned person, your weakness has already been pointed out by Chancellor Ba Shan. This time will make you lose from the back of the alley to the front. Qin Mu turned around and asked him seriously. This senior brother, what's your name? So I would know whom I have lost to after I'm defeated. A smile gradually broke out on the scholar's face. Well, I'll tell you so you'll know. My surname is Yan and my first name is Qinghe. Qin Mu said firmly. I wish senior brother Yan be the first one to defeat me. Senior brother Yan, please favor me with your instructions. Yan Qinghe was greatly delighted and smiled. You may be from a barbaric land, but you still have a sense of propriety. That also good. I won't make you lose too miserably. Show your sword. Rumble. Qin Mu raised his leg and took a stride forward. His strong body actually caused the air in front of him to compress into a wall formed from the air. In the next instant, the wall of air exploded into pieces. With a punch from Qin Mu bursting forth, his fist broke through the air and caused circular and white streams of air scattered in all directions. Why are you not showing your sword? Yan Qinghe had no time to bother to use qi to manipulate sword. He hurriedly raised both of his arms and blocked this punch with his forearms, as he absolutely had no time to use qi to manipulate sword. If he still wanted to make his sword fly out of his sheath, he would probably have died from this punch before his sword had even come out from its sheath. Whoosh! The sound of a heavy object breaking through the air sounded out, and the scholars that were behind Yan Qinghe looked pale and hurriedly dodged. They could only see Yan Qinghe's figure flying backward and reached the back of the alley in an instant. At the back of the alley, Wei Yong was about to open his door when a shadow passed quickly by, followed by a loud crashing sound. A human smacked into the wall of the back alley with his limbs spreading out widely. His body was deeply embedded in the wall, and the wall around his body had caved in, and the shattered rocks were fully covered with spider web lines. Wei Yong jumped in shock and hurriedly popped his head out to take a look. He shot a glance at the situation in the alley of Scholar's residence and beamed with joy. Senior brothers, don't misunderstand, I didn't see anything and I won't say anything out. He was about to fall back into his room when a figure suddenly appeared behind him. Wei Yong turned around at once and saw Chancellor Ba Shan standing behind him. Don't say anything. Chancellor Ba Shan said in a low voice. Let him fight. Wei Yong was bewildered and asked, Chancellor, what are you planning to do? Chancellor Ba Shan shot him a glance and said, I plan to pick out a few scholars that are worth teaching from Scholar's residence and personally teach them divine arts, paths, and skills. Wei Yong was still slightly puzzled. Chancellor Ba Shan was immensely proud of himself. I deliberately blurted out the weakness on Scholar Qin's shoulder to instigate these scholars to make a move on Scholar Qin. Because once they know Scholar Qin's weakness, they would definitely make a move on Scholar Qin and he will defeat them. This way I would know how strong these scholars are. If they can only take Qin's 1 or 2 moves, they are definitely not suitable. In any case, they must at least be able to take 3 to 5 moves from Scholar Qin. Only then they deserve to be personally taught by me. Wei Yong exclaimed in admiration. What a brilliant idea! Chancellor sure is intelligent. That's right, Chancellor, how do you think I? Chancellor Ba Shan sized him up and asked, How many moves can you take from Scholar Qin? Wei Yong's head started to ache. I also have to go and exchange a few blows with Scholar Qin? Chancellor Ba Shan gave a kind smile. Wei Yong's scalp turned numb. Bang! A loud bang sounded from outside and a scholar was slapped onto the ground by Qin Mu, shattering dozens of bricks on the ground. The few odd-job men who were fixing the door and wall for Qin Mu were also shocked, their brows frowning. An odd-job man said calmly, "Young masters, please minimize your activities, save us from repairing your residences daily." Qin Mu bowed. "Sorry to trouble all of you." He lifted his foot and started to walk out of the alley. When he passed a scholar, the corners of the scholar's eyes twitched, but he remained motionless. He continued to walk forward, and a scholar was about to raise his hand to unsheath his sword when a loud rumble was heard. That scholar was directly smashed into the ground by him with one palm, and only a head was left outside. Minimize the damage. That old odd-job man couldn't resist shouting loudly. Qin Mu immediately turned around and carefully bowed in apology before continuing to walk out. There was another scholar who couldn't resist making a move, and a few booms sounded out that were similar to the vibration of a bowstring. This scholar flew into the air and got hung on top of the wall. Meanwhile, the strong wind flicked out by Qin Mu's fingers punched a few holes in the wall. The old odd-job man was about to blow up when Qin Mu immediately turned around to apologize. Whoosh! A scholar flew up into the air and flailed his limbs as he dropped down. He crashed through the roof headfirst and half of his body was stuck outside. Rumble! Another vibration traveled out as another scholar got smashed into the wall by Qin Mu. The few odd-job men saw what happened and gave off helpless sighs. They had given up on asking them to minimize their movements. "Let me do it." Qin Mu suddenly felt a fierce wind coming directly from his back and hurriedly turned around. He saw sword lights that were like swimming dragons coming head-on, and the dozens of dragons flew up and down around him. Swim sword form. Qin Mu was astonished. There were really not many scholars who could cultivate swim sword form to such degree, and to integrate the dragon's thought into the sword. He should be Qin Yu that had such profound attainments. Qin Mu put his fingers together and he used his vital qi as a sword. With his fingers throbbing, he executed all the basic sword forms and sliced through the middle of all the swimming dragons that were sword lights. The glow of the swimming dragons dispersed, and they turned into sharp swords which nailed into the walls with a hum. Qin Yu's sword case was already emptied out, and he revealed a panic expression. His body movement was like a dragon and was about to fall back when Qin Mu gave a few flicks of his fingers. 5 explosions sounded out as the thunder fingers flicked Qin Yu away. "Your ability isn't bad. I would like to see that young dragon's sword technique." Qin Mu praised and asked Qin Yu. That few odd-job men who were repairing the wall cheered when they saw Qin Mu's sword skills. "Little brother, you have the bearing of a great master." "Grandmaster my ass." Yu Qinghong stepped on Wolf Slave's shoulder and sneered. Wolf Slave took big strides as he rushed towards Qin Mu and grabbed his magic knives with his both hands, swinging them up and down. Meanwhile, Yu Qinghong's body trembled and dozens of swords came flying out from the sword case on her back. Meeting face to face on a narrow path, the braver one will win. On this narrow path, the combination of Wolf Slave and I will be invincible. Junior brother Qin, now that your weakness is exposed, it's best for you to go back to Great Ruins. With one up and one down, the 2 magic knives of Wolf Slave were like a black gale coming straight for him. Meanwhile, the 31 swords behind Yu Qinghong had their tips pointing towards Qin Mu. At the very front was 1 sword which was followed by 2 swords, then 4, 8 and 16, which formed a huge drill sword form. As all the swords starting spinning, they stabbed down at Qin Mu. "Senior sister Yu, you have cultivated your sword skills pretty well." Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration and smiled. "However, I have already cultivated refining qi into thread, so you aren't my match." "Refining qi into thread?" Yu Qinghong went into a fury. "Are you trying to insult me?" Qin Mu pointed at her and the vital qi threads on his fingertip burst forth. The hundreds of vital qi threads had the shape of sharp swords which had their heads and tails joined together. It was similar to drill sword form but much thicker. The sword pillar was as thick as a water cauldron. With the front being the tip of a sword, it grew thicker and thicker in the back as it stabbed at Wolf Slave. The magic knives on Wolf Slave's hands were like black lightning crossing each other, clashing with Qin Mu's drill sword form. In an instant, sparks flew off in all directions inside the alley. Even though Wolf Slave had extraordinary strength, his arms were turning numb from the vibration, causing him to be unable to control his magic knives and split his shirt open. Yu Qinghong was shocked and used drill sword form to stab at Qin Mu's shoulder. She attached Qin Mu to save Wolf's slave, solving his predicament. Qin Mu gave a soft laugh and his fingertip gently flicked upwards, turning it into flick sword form. The drill sword form which was stabbing towards Wolf's slave suddenly changed, and the countless of sword lights transformed from drill sword form into spiral sword form. However, what he was executing was still flick sword form. These two sword moves had actually been merged perfectly together by him without any bit of obstruction. His countless vital chi threads coiled around Yu Qinghong's drill sword form, and non-stop clanging could be heard. That drill sword form which was constructed by the flying swords were instantly destroyed. In a split second, all 31 swords were pierced through by countless of vital chi threads, turning them into broken sieves that were filled with small holes. Yu Qinghong gave a shout and Wolf's slave who was under her legs immediately threw away both of his knives, jumping up to kick Qin Mu. Qin Mu kicked back and a loud rumble sounded out as Wolf's slave's huge body flew backward. Meanwhile, Yu Qinghong who was on Wolf's slave's back took the chance to leap up and stabbed at Qin Mu's shoulder while using her finger as a sword. Vital chi burst forth from her finger, and turned into a sword chi which was about to stab into Qin Mu's shoulder. Suddenly a devil voice sounded out. Saramoi! Yu Qinghong's mind was shaken and she lost control of her mind. Next, she heard music starting to play which made her disperse her sword chi, and started to dance in front of Qin Mu while chuckling. Yu Qinghong's cultivation was still strong after all which made her regain her consciousness soon afterward. She immediately strengthened her mind. She then moved back and felt a warmth on her back. She thought to herself, crap! Boom! Qin Mu had leaned on her back and suddenly exerted his force to lean backward, smashing her into the wall at the side. Behind that wall was the residence of Monk Yun Ke, and when the wall suddenly collapsed, the aura around Monk Yun Ke's body shone brilliantly, knocking Yu Qinghong who was in the wall away. He laughed loudly. Senior sister Yu, let me show you how to defeat him. Yu Qinghong who was flying through the air warned angrily. Monk, you're no good. You're only going up for a beating. I'm no good. Monk Yun Ke blew up and his moves were fierce and overbearing. They were like dragons and elephants sprinting and attacking Qin Mu, causing the shattered rocks beneath his feet flying in all directions as the limestone tiles got shattered into pieces by his berserk strength. Senior sister, don't you ever say that Monk is no good again. Monk is good. A dull and astonishing boom sounded out from the four palms of Qin Mu and Yun Ke which had clashed. Yun Ke laughed and said, the one with the surname Qin, you didn't expect this, right? I have already cultivated Imperial Preceptor's sword skills into the force of my palms. My mighty force 5-stage Madra. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt a strength that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas crushing towards him. The strength was incomparably violent and crumbled his vital chi easily, defeating his mighty force 5-stage Madra. Monk Yun Ke gave a dull groan and fell back. He then executed Dragon Elephant subduing Devil Madra, and only heard a loud rumble. Yun Ke's clothes split into pieces and fluttered upwards like white butterflies dancing in the sky. His body was now bare and he had no clothing to cover his body, less for the white short pants which were tattered. Monk Yun Ke saw Qin Mu throwing another punch over, and this punch actually broke through the air, giving off a world-shaking thunderclap. There were sparks that accompanied the punch, making it look like lightning. When the punch came rumbling over, balls of white fog burst forth around the fist and spread out in all directions. Crap! There was only this thought left in his mind as he took Qin Mu's punch head-on. As he had expected, the white short pants on the lower half of his body split into pieces and turned into butterflies flying away. He was completely bare now. Monk Yun Ke flew backward from this matchless strength. However, this monk's cultivation was still dense so he could turn his body in midair to make himself face the wall. Splat! He smacked face first into the wall, exposing his butt outside. Luckily it wasn't my back facing the wall. Yun Ke comforted himself and fainted happily. Qin Mu shook his clothes out and removed all the dust on his body. At this moment, a timid trembling voice was sounded behind him. Brother Qin! Qin Mu looked back and saw Wei Yong walking over from the back of the alley while trembling. He carried a sword case and his legs were still shaking. Brother Wei, what's wrong? Qin Mu was bewildered. Wei Yong opened up his sword case and said with a sobbing voice, You have been against the tide, so I will have to enforce justice on behalf of heaven and exchange blows with you, to let you know the immensity of heaven and earth. This sentence is too ruthless, I don't dare to say it. Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Brother Wei, you want to exchange blows with me? It's normal for senior brother and junior brother to exchange blows, much less to say that we've been through life and death together. How about this? You and I will take care not to overdo it. Only then did Wei Yong feel at ease. With his flying swords flying out from his case, he composed himself and said, Brother Qin, just don't beat me as hard as you beat that monk. His sword started to spiral and he executed the spiral sword technique which Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had taught. Ever since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had given the lecture, there were many scholars who were practicing the 3 basic sword forms during this period. It was evident that Wei Yong also had some understanding of it. The scholars of Imperial College weren't dumb, and they all could comprehend some marvel of it. Wei Yong may be slightly plump, but his comprehension and aptitude not low, and had a deep understanding of the 3 sword forms. He had a solid foundation of profound learning inherited by the family, and his own ability wasn't weak as well, not losing to Qin Yu. Qin Mu also wanted to see how his abilities were. Therefore, he didn't attack mercilessly like he did Qin Yu, and had instead used spiral sword form to cross swords with him. Both their sword skills winded around each other, and they each had their own transformations as they executed the intricate sword techniques they had comprehended respectively. When the scholars not far away saw this, they couldn't care less about the injuries on their bodies as all their gazes landed on the sword skills of both of them. Wei Yong's sword skills were already extremely remarkable. Coming from River Tomb's Wei family, there was a great expert in Wei family who was a current first-ranking high official, Duke Wei. Duke Wei was a cult master-level existence and had outstanding military service. He had once exterminated a human country in one battle. Exterminate Heaven Remnant country in the northern borders. The entire Heaven Remnant country was brought into the territory of eternal peace. That was why he was conferred as a duke. Wei Yong didn't have a high position in Wei family, but he had been hard-working ever since he was young. The family teachings of Wei family were profound and his ability was considered outstanding among the younger generations of Wei family. Meanwhile, the same spiral sword form. There were much more transformations in Qin Mu's sword skill. It wasn't only sword technique, but also had the marvel of fist skill mixed into it. When Qin Mu exchanged blows with him, it looked more like a senior brother guiding a junior brother, giving him pointers to comprehend the profundity of the sword skill. When Wei Yong had pretty much comprehended it, he would move on to the next move. Not long later, they exchanged 3 moves and Wei Yong let out a sigh of relief. His confidence had grown tremendously and he smiled. Brother Qin, you can use your full strength. I would like to see how big the difference is between us. Qin Mu gave a slight smile and suddenly changed his move. As his sword skill stabbed out, he used the move Sunshine Refining Yang Soul in the sky to attack Wei Yong and boomed him out of his mind, causing him to have to immediately stabilize his mind. Qin Mu turned his hand over and used another Heavenly Devil Freedom Madra which instantly caused Wei Yong to lose guard of his soul and get put down by Qin Mu with one sword. Qin Mu dispersed his vital qi and helped him up with a smile. Brother Wei, excuse me. Wei Yong climbed up and looked around. He saw that half of the scholars in Scholars' Residence were defeated while the other half was afraid to go forward. He smiled. Compared to the others, my circumstance is considered good. That's right, I've heard other people saying that your shoulder has a weakness. How come when they know your weakness they still can't hurt you? Knowing my weakness is one thing while being able to break it is another. Qin Mu said. If it was a fight on the same realm, there would be only 2 to 3 people in the entire Imperial College, including the directorates, who could find the chance to hit my weakness. Wei Yong was speechless. Qin Mu looked around and saw that Scholars' Residence was in a state of complete destruction once again. Those few oddjob men stared at him with resentment. He immediately apologized to those few oddjob men and said, Brother Wei, I still need to go to floor of heavenly records. Fellow senior brothers and senior sisters, I can't continue to accompany all of you, farewell. After he said this, he walked out. No one in Scholars' Residence dared to block him now. Yu Qinghong stood up from the debris and looked at Qin Mu walking out of Scholars' Residence while sighing softly. He's then the big brother of our Scholars' Residence. Crash. A wall suddenly collapsed and dust permeated the air. Among the clouds of dust, Monk Yun-Kei immediately scrambled away with one hand covering the front of his body and the other hand covering his butt. He sprinted back into his courtyard and rushed into the central room before slamming the door shut. Many scholars wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare. After a moment, Monk Yun-Kei's voice sounded out. The senior brother's outside. Poor Monk doesn't have any remaining clothes here. The only set was taken by the fox and she didn't want to return it to me. Does anyone have spare clothing to give one to poor Monk? I'll shed tears of gratitude. Wei Yong smiled. Senior brother Yun, please wait a moment. I have a few spare sets of clothing, however they are slightly big. Yun-Kei replied. Not a problem, the clothes of a monk are also mere worldly possessions. Chancellor Ba Shan walked out from Wei Yong's room and calculated to himself. Chun Wan-Yun is considered one, junior brother Qin is one. In addition, Qin Yu of Qin family and the little fatty are both not bad. Yu Qinghong and Yun-Kei are also experts in their own ways. In this way, there will be 6 people chosen for being imperial academicians. It shouldn't be hard for me to guide them in their cultivations. However, other than scholars' residence, there are also scholars of 5 Elements realm in Royalties Park. I can't favor one and discriminate against the other, so I will have to choose a few scholars from Royalties Park as well, so as to not let the Emperor find trouble with me. The ones he had chosen to teach were all scholars who had yet cultivated to 6 Directions realm. If they had cultivated to 6 Directions realm, they would be divine arts practitioners and their paths were basically set in place. That way he couldn't be able to teach them in line with their abilities anymore. Chancellor Ba Shan walked out of Scholar's residence and came to Royalties Park beside. There was quite a number of princes, princesses, and nobles with good and bad ones mingled together. Yet, they all had complicated factions. Imperial princes and imperial princesses were the children of the emperor, while the princes and princesses were the children of kings. Other than the princes and princesses fighting for the positions of the kings, there was also the strife for power between the imperial princes and imperial princesses, which really gave one a headache. This was what Chancellor Ba Shan was most irritated about, yet he had no choice. Otherwise, he would offend the imperial family, which would definitely cause trouble for him. Why not ask the second prince's opinion? He made the decision and went to inquire from the second prince. Ling Yushu was surprised and delighted. Ba Shan was a directorate of Imperial College and his position in Imperial College was just second to Grand Chancellor. His ability was deep and unmeasurable, which would not lose to any of the first-ranking high officials of the Imperial Court or any school master, cult master and sect master of any big sections. He was one of the top existents in the world today. If I could get his teachings, it would naturally be a good thing. Second prince seems be mistaken. Chancellor Ba Shan saw the glee on his face and instantly knew he had misunderstood. I only teach scholars that are of 6 Directions realm and below. I don't know too much about Royalties Park, so I would like the second prince to recommend 2 scholars. Ling Yushu's expression turned sad. The amount of resources the crown prince received was much more than the other imperial princes. As an imperial prince like him, because he wasn't the crown prince, the amount of grooming he received after he was born was way lesser than the crown prince. Even though imperial princes and imperial princesses could enter imperial college to cultivate without taking the examinations, the crown prince had no less than 6 cult master level teachers to impart their knowledge to him. Furthermore, the emperor would personally teach him from time to time. Even the directorates would go forth to teach him. The crown prince was not only taught all kinds of top-notch ultimate arts, he was also taught the way of being an emperor so as to have the ability to control all the civil and military officers. He even had to befriend the chancellors of the imperial court to form his own little imperial court. For the other imperial princes and imperial princesses, even if they wanted to aspire to the throne, they didn't have this kind of ability to compete. Chancellor Ba Shan's ability was equivalent to the ability of a cult master level existence, so even though it couldn't be compared to what the crown prince was receiving, it was still much better to be able to receive his teachings. It was just that Chancellor Ba Shan was only teaching scholars of Spirit Embryo Realm and 5 Element Realm, so there was naturally no place for him. Ling Yushu suppressed the disappointment in his heart and smiled. My 7th sister's comprehension and aptitude are all top-notch, and even Imperial Preceptor said she had extraordinary aptitude when he met her. Her aptitude even surpasses mine, although she's a little playful. With Chancellor Ba Shan's strictness, you can help me toughen her up and change her personality a bit. Chancellor Ba Shan was astonished. 7th Princess? She is really a little playful, which held back the advancement in her cultivation. Those directorates didn't make things difficult for her in regards to her status of the imperial princess, but she will suffer a lot if she is with me. Ling Yushu's gaze flickered and he thought to himself, 7th sister, you're too close with that abandoned person and I can't guarantee you won't do something that would dishonor the reputation of our imperial family. This time you'll be going out of the mountain, you'll be able to leave far away from that Qin Mu, and when you see more young talents, you'll be able to forget that abandoned person. Brother is doing this for your own good, so as not to let you go down the wrong path. 2nd Prince, do you have anyone else in your mind? Chancellor Ba Shan asked again. Ling Yushu thought a while and said, Ling Mingyue, Prince Mingyue. The son of King Taishan, Ling Mingyue? Chancellor Ba Shan smiled. He shows great promise as well. I've heard you and Prince Mingyue are on bad terms, so why do you recommend him? Ling Yushu smiled. I'm on bad terms with Mingyue only because King Taishan supports my elder brother. However, Mingyue's aptitude and comprehension are indeed top-notch among the others in Royalty's Park. Chancellor Ba Shan nodded his head. 2nd Prince is virtuous. In that case, I'll let 2nd Prince inform them about this good news and let them come to Scholar's residence to find me. Ling Yushu was delighted. He knew that Chancellor Ba Shan had given him this chance to rope in Prince Mingyue and immediately left. Ling Yushu and Prince Mingyue came to Scholar's residence, and other than them, there were also Qin Yu, Chan Wanyun, Yun Ke, Wei Yong and some other scholars. Chancellor Ba Shan said, I have discussed with Grand Chancellor to test out Imperial Academicians on top of scholars, and all of you will be chosen as Provisional Imperial Academicians. From today onwards, all of you will only go Pavilion of Art Saint, Hall of Azure Yang, Floor of Military Secrets, Hall of Array Element, Pavilion of Heavenly Music to listen to lectures, learn painting, calligraphy, frame of mind, the art of war, the art of formations and temperament. You'll learn others from me and I'll teach you in line with your abilities, which is different from the other scholars. After a few years, it would depend on your ability to see if you can become an Imperial Academician. That's right. He looked around and smiled. All of you also have a big brother, or perhaps you should call him Senior Uncle. He is the first Imperial Academician of our Imperial College, and I have already discussed it with Grand Chancellor. I have reported it up to the Emperor, and the Emperor's appointment would soon come down. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The first Imperial Academician? Who exactly was it? Yu Qinghong and Monk Yun Ke immediately looked at Chan Wanyun and saw that he had a mixed expression. Chancellor Ba Shan said, This time I will first bring 7th Princess out for training for a few days. As for the other people, you'll have to wait until the next time. Imperial Princess, you can go over to Floor of Heavenly Records to choose a few ancient scrolls on techniques and divine arts. The others will stay. Everyone was surprised and elated. Floor of Heavenly Records. The secretary checked his book tablet and told Qin Mu, You can't spoil any book when going in to browse them. If the books inside are damaged, you'll be imprisoned. With your book tablet, you can only browse the books on the 1st level. Don't go up to the 2nd level, otherwise the secretary on the 2nd floor would seize and punish you. Qin Mu said, I'll follow Chancellor Ba Shan out for cultivation and learn through outside experience, therefore, I would like to borrow a few ancient scrolls out. That secretary was astonished and replied, So I see. Chancellor Ba Shan has privilege, therefore, his disciples can borrow 5 ancient scrolls out. You may go in to choose the ancient scrolls and record them over here with me. Qin Mu walked into the floor and saw dozens of rooms on the floor. Each room was extremely vast and there was tablet pasted on the door of every room. The ancient scrolls in these rooms should be classified according to their prefectures. All the techniques, skills, and divine arts from the sects of this county would be kept in the room that represented it. Qin Mu walked into the room which hung Li Zhou's tablet. He only saw a dozen of bookshelves and ancient scrolls were placed on the bookshelves. There were also different names of the sects written on the tablets which were hung on the bookshelves. Other than sects, there were also names of aristocratic families. There weren't many people in the room. There were only 2 to 3 scholars sitting on the floor and holding up their scrolls to read. There were also a few smaller doors at the side and Qin Mu walked forward. 2 of the doors were locked from the inside and there was still one door unlocked. He pushed open the door and was slightly stunned. Behind this door was a space with an area of 7 aries. It was much bigger than the room they were in, but there was nothing inside. Could it be a place for scholars to practice their techniques, skills, and divine arts? Qin Mu came to the front of a bookshelf and picked out a scroll while lowering his head to have a look. He was astonished. There are actually so many sects in Lizhou Prefecture. On the scroll was written Red Cloud's technique of Lizhou's Red Cloud sect. There were also a few scrolls beside it which were Red Cloud's sword skills, Red Cloud's 4 formations, secrets of Red Cloud's pills, etc. Qin Mu roughly skimmed through it, and there were indeed unique points in Red Cloud sect's techniques. Once one cultivated this technique, their vital qi would turn into red clouds, and whenever they made a move, the entire sky would be filled with red clouds. Meanwhile, they would be able to hide flying swords among the red clouds, and the enemies would usually get hit as their visions were clouded by the red clouds. Even though Red Cloud's technique isn't bad, it still couldn't be considered miraculous. He put down Red Cloud's technique and took a few looks at Red Cloud's sword skills before putting it back. Red Cloud's sword skill was a set of system with Red Cloud's technique. Only those who had cultivated Red Cloud's technique could cultivate Red Cloud's sword skill. He then took a look at Red Cloud's 4 formations, and this formation skill also required one to cultivate Red Cloud's technique and Red Cloud's sword skills to be able to cultivate Red Cloud's 4 formations. Secret of Red Cloud's pills was also roughly skimmed through by him, and it was mainly about the art of pill refinement. There were still some prescriptions that were worth referencing, however. There were also some prescriptions that obviously had problems as their toxicities weren't completely resolved. He put the scrolls of Red Cloud sect back onto the bookshelf and took out another set of thick scrolls. The ancient scrolls of Yuan Empire's imperial family? Qin Mu was astonished and read it over and over again while thinking to himself, aren't the ancient scrolls of Lizhou sects on these bookshelves? Where did this Yuan Empire pop out from? That's right. What's the relation between Yuan Empire and Yuan Chuyu? Could it be that Lizhou was an Eternal Peace Empire's territory before, and belonged to an empire called Yuan? Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. Yuan Chuyu was the young magistrate of Lizhou, and Yuan was her surname. She said she also had a brother called Yuan Chuyan, who was an official in the capital city. Could they siblings be the past royalties of Yuan Empire? Yuan Chuyu's official position wasn't low, and having such a high status at such a young age, she should have powerful backing. Lizhou is situated in the south-central region of Eternal Peace Empire, so it seems that the amount of countries Eternal Peace Empire has annexed isn't small. Qin Mu flipped through Yuan Empire's imperial studies, and even though the ancient scrolls of Yuan Empire's royalty weren't complete, they were much better than Red Cloud sects. Yuan Empire's imperial study was called Chengdu Zaitian Mystery Technique, which was almost an entire system. Its sword skill was called Sunset Sword Skill. Qin Mu skimmed through it and decided to choose this set of ancient scrolls. For sword skills, he had only cultivated the first form of sword picture, which was sword treading mountains and rivers. However, the chi consumption of sword treading mountains and rivers was too huge, and if he met enemies during normal times and used this sword skill, one move would deplete almost all of Qin Mu's vital qi. If there were more enemies, it would be bad for him. Therefore, he needed a first-class sword skill. Sunset Sword Skill of Yuan Empire was a first-class sword skill which appealed to him. Just now that secretary said I could choose 5 ancient scrolls, I should probably go and find more. Qin Mu roughly checked the other bookshelves and didn't find anything he fancied. None of the techniques of other sects was as good as Yuan Empire's Chengdu Zaitian Profound Technique. He searched the rooms one by one and found some first-class techniques which made him secretly curious. If there were already so many ancient scrolls collected on the first level of floor of heavenly records, how powerful would the ancient scrolls kept on the second level and third level be? Something's not right. Some of the ancient scrolls the sects offered up had probably been cut out, and they didn't offer their true ultimate arts. The more Qin Mu browsed these ancient scrolls, the more doubts arose in his heart. Many of the ancient scrolls here had been cut out and some ultimate arts were not included. He took a rough look through them and could clearly felt this. For example, 9 songs connecting river sword skill had 9 moves in total, but when he executed the 9th move, he felt his own vigor and the power of the sword skill reaching the peak, which was then followed by nothing. An astonishing power was brewed out, yet there was no 10th move to unleash this power. This showed that 9 Song Sword Sect did not offer the complete sword skill, and had concealed something of their skills. There were many similar cases. It was obvious that these powers were not willing to hand over their ultimate arts to Eternal Peace Empire and should have all retained some stuff to themselves. Not long later, Qin Mu chose his second ancient scroll. This ancient scroll was called Soul Guide, which was able to hook a dead person's soul out from the netherworld, and could also allow the person casting the spell to enter the netherworld. The reason he chose Soul Guide was mainly because the spells involved with this field and floor of heavenly records were too few. Qin Mu thought if he developed it furtherly, could he be able to hook back the soul of someone who had just died and revive him? After that, he also chose Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes Command of Great Mountain Sect. The spells of Great Mountain Sect were also very unusual, to be able to use runes to borrow the power of ghosts and gods. This made him feel that it was connected with the path of painting. He only chose 3 ancient scrolls and there were no benefits in choosing more. There was already quite a number of techniques he had to cultivate, and in addition to the fact that the techniques and skills in great educational heavenly devil scriptures were as many as the hair of the ox, he needed to spend a lot of time to comprehend them, therefore he didn't need to choose too many. Qin Mu brought the 3 ancient scrolls to meet that secretary, and the secretary recorded down the ancient scrolls and his book tablet before allowing him to leave floor of heavenly records. 2 days later, the imperial edict came down from the emperor to appoint Qin Mu as an imperial academician of Imperial College, conferring him as an official of upper 6th ranking, and also allowing him to access up to the 3rd level of floor of heavenly records without being controlled by Imperial College. In front of the mountain gate of Imperial College, Chancellor Ba Shan was standing there to wait. After a while, second Prince Ling Yushu hurried over, dragging the unwilling Ling Yuxiu. 7th sister, following Chancellor Ba Shan to cultivate would definitely be much better than staying in Imperial College. Ling Yushu smiled and said, Chancellor Ba Shan, that's a cult master level existence who far surpasses all the other directorates. Even I'm envious of you and hope more than anything to be Chancellor's disciple. So don't hesitate. You're my dear sister. We came out from the same womb, so why would I harm you? Beside the mountain gate, a huge and sturdy green bull stood up like a human, and was teasing the dragon Qilin that was guarding the mountain gate. Sometimes he pulled on a strand of dragon beard, and sometimes he touched the dragon Qilin's tail. I say, sister, when are you going out to play with brother? The green bull leaned in front of the mountain gate with a tree peony in his mouth as he chuckled. Sister, what's the joy in guarding here every day? Let me bring you out. The world of sensual pleasure is bound to make you happy. Do you see this pretty flower of mine? I'll give it to you to eat. Dragon Qilin held back his anger as he glanced at Chancellor Ba Shan, and immediately suppressed his thoughts to become hostile and eat this green bull. Chancellor Ba Shan, when are you leaving? Ling Yushu asked. Chancellor Ba Shan raised his head and looked up the mountain. We need to wait for one more person. He should be coming down. Ling Yushu looked at his sister beside him and was somewhat proud of himself. Luckily I was quick-witted, otherwise 7th sister won't stop herself from fooling around with that abandoned person from Great Ruins if she stays on the mountain. Now that they're separated far away from each other, he won't have the chance anymore. Ling Yuxiu was his full sister born from the same father and mother, therefore, he naturally looked after her in every possible way. In his eyes, all the other princes and princesses were competitors to him, and only Ling Yuxiu was his dearest sister, therefore, he couldn't let the bad guys have any chance. Just as Ling Yushu was thinking about it, he raised his head and saw a youth walking down the mountain while carrying loads of stuff. There were things like an axe, pig slaughtering knife, bamboo cane, and he also carried a huge backpack with a white fox squatting on top of it. This guy looks like he's running for his life. Is he planning to flee down the mountain? Ling Yushu thought to himself. Chancellor Ba Shan saw Qin Mu and finally let out a sigh and smiled. Everyone's here. Ling Yushu couldn't help quivering and looked at Chancellor Ba Shan, stuttering. The person teacher is waiting for is him? Chancellor Ba Shan nodded his head and shattered the tiniest bit of delusion he had in his heart. On the other hand, Ling Yuxiu was overjoyed and looked at her dazed brother proudly. Her brother's petty intention naturally couldn't be hidden from her. Ling Yuxiu hesitated in his heart and wanted to ask Chancellor Ba Shan if she could withdraw, but it wasn't good for him to say it out. Teacher Ba Shan, can I cultivate along with you? Ling Yushu still didn't give up and immediately asked. Chancellor Ba Shan shook his head. Second Prince, your cultivation is too high and you have already reached 7 stars realm. You're already old and your path is determined, therefore I'm unable to teach you. Don't worry, 7th princess won't suffer with me. You can go back. Ling Yushu didn't bear to go back and stood there to glare at Qin Mu. Qin Mu was bewildered. He didn't know how had he offended this prince. Chancellor Ba Shan announced with a deep voice. Since everyone's here, let us be off. Qin Mu immediately said. Teacher, wait a moment. Chancellor Ba Shan halted and turned back to have a look. Qin Mu walked to the front of the dragon Qilin, and the incomparably sturdy green bull immediately backed off and looked at him cautiously. Qin Mu didn't mind him and held his breath as he took out a jade bottle. He unscrewed the cap of the jade bottle and placed it under the dragon Qilin's nose. This dragon Qilin was instantly paralyzed on the ground by him. The big green bull immediately jumped far away and looked at him in terror. Qin Mu quickly screwed back the bottle cap, and the little fox swept up a gale to disperse the strange fragrance that had leaked out. Only then did Qin Mu gasp for breath. Hu Linger then took out another bottle from the backpack and handed it over to Qin Mu. Qin Mu opened up the bottle and a choking sour smell was let out. He then poured the liquid into the bottle into the dragon Qilin's mouth. That was the juice squeezed out from a lemon. The dragon Qilin might be paralyzed and couldn't move, but his tongue would still uncontrollably secrete out saliva when in contact with the sour taste of lemon. Hu Linger hurriedly took out jade bottles from her backpack, and Qin Mu took them and placed them under the corner of the dragon Qilin's mouth to collect the saliva. After 10 bottles, the saliva of this dragon Qilin was finally depleted, and no more saliva flew out. Qin Mu stood up and smiled. Teacher Sister Yushio, we can be off now. Chancellor Ba Shan glanced at the paralyzed dragon Qilin and asked curiously, What are you collecting dragon saliva for? Qin Mu explained, This is a miraculous medicine for curing external injuries. If you had knife or sword wounds, applying it to the wounds could help regenerate the flesh and shed the dead skin. There will inevitably be injuries from this outdoor experience, so there's no harm in preparing more. Chancellor Ba Shan's heart was slightly moved. Qin Mu probably did this not just for the possible injuries on the journey, but also for reconnecting Butcher's lower half of his body and letting Butcher recover completely. Qin Mu then said, Teacher, can you lend me your green bull? The green bull was alarmed. Don't you dare mess around. Linger and I have already become sworn brother and sister. If you dare to eat me, my elder sister will fight it out with you. Am I right, Sister Linger? Hu Linger was proud of herself. He got too drunk and became my sworn younger brother. Qin Mu smiled. I'm only asking you to help me carry my luggage. Look at you, so nervous. By the way, I checked it just now, that dragon Qilin is a male. The green bull seemed to get struck 30 times by the rolling thunder, turning numb and dazed on the spot. He suddenly cried out loudly, and Hu Linger went up to comfort him. It's okay, it's okay. Male and female are all the same, he didn't like you anyway. Furthermore, if he really liked you, it would then be bad for you. Chancellor Ba Shan shook his head and brought them out of Imperial College, walking out of the capital city. The green bull suddenly crawled on the ground and gave off a dull howl. The body under his bull skin suddenly gave off loud bangs as his bones rapidly grew. His muscles also bulged outwards and his fur grew frantically. He was originally 2 to 3 human tall when he stood up. Now he revealed his true form. He was even much bigger than he originally was. His body was over 10 times larger and his 2 hands became bull hooves. Smoke spewed out from his nostrils and wind was raised under his feet. Chancellor Ba Shan made Qin Mu and Ling Yushio board Bull's back and placed their backpacks on the bull's back. Second Prince, there's no need to send us off. Go back. Chancellor Ba Shan looked at Ling Yushu, who had sent them all the way out of the capital city, and smiled. They'll be fine. You can go back. Ling Yushu had a bitter face as he waved towards Ling Yushio. Ling Yushio was currently talking to Qin Mu, and he didn't know what joke Qin Mu, that impetuous boy, had said, which made Ling Yushio chuckle and gave the youth a punch to his chest. Ling Yushu felt that he got punched heavily in his chest and sulked. The 4 feet of the green bull took strides forward and the wind was raised under his feet. He sprinted towards the distance and left Ling Yushu in the dust. Hu Linger sat on the bull's curved horns and her pure white fur fluttered backward in the wind that was blowing in her face. That pair of bull's horns curved into 2 circles, allowing her to sit inside easily without getting blown away. The little fox asked curiously, Bull 2, you actually know how to control wind? The green bull smiled. What's so hard about controlling wind? I'm a species of dragon and controlling the tempest is my innate ability. You'll know when you look at my skin. Aren't my green skin and hair similar to the green dragon? My ancestor is the green dragon. It's not something you little demons could be compared to. He was very arrogant. His bloodline made him much different from the other strange beasts. If he met other strange beasts, he could just use his dragon's might to intimidate the opponent and turn them docile. Hu Linger stroked his scalp and his cowskin was glossy and extremely thick. His skin had astonishing defense and the dragon's scales on his neck were also dazzling to the eyes. She exclaimed in admiration, "Bull 2, your skin must be worth a lot of money." The green bull stumbled and immediately shut its mouth, thinking to himself, "My sworn sister is also a ruthless character. Her master wants to eat me, she wants to strip my skin to exchange it for money. Savage, their savageness has become second by nature. Bull is simple and honest. It's best for me to have lesser contact with these bad guys. It's just that I got intoxicated by her, and made her my sworn elder sister, falling into her evil scheme." Ling Yuxiu turned her head around and asked Chancellor Ba Shan, "Teacher, where are we going for experience?" Beyond the Great Wall. Chancellor Ba Shan was currently going through the ancient scrolls Qin Mu, and she handed up and didn't even raise his head to reply. "Barbarian D Empire." Ling Yuxiu jumped in shock. Barbarian D Empire? She had long heard about the bitter situation on Barbarian D's battlefield which had exceeded their imagination. Qin Mu's heart slightly stirred and looked towards Chancellor Ba Shan. "Senior brother, you have found the lower half-body of Grandpa Butcher?" Chancellor Ba Shan nodded his head. The lower half-body of Master was snatched away by a small sect. This small sect was exterminated by the shaman cult of Barbarian D Empire, Roland's Golden Palace. Master's lower half-body should have landed in the hands of Roland's Golden Palace. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. No wonder Chancellor Ba Shan chose to go to Barbarian D Empire. He was still slightly bewildered. Why did Roland's Golden Palace exterminate that small sect to snatch away Butcher's lower half-body? The green bull traveled all the way to the west and they came to the bank of Mud River. The green bull stepped on the water and sprinted upstream. The ability of this bull could be compared to the Demon King. He was even more stable stepping on the water than stepping on land. Furthermore, he was also good at controlling wind and thunder, thus his speed was extremely fast. Going at this speed, he could totally travel 1,000 miles in a day. Chancellor Ba Shan roughly skimmed through the ancient scrolls that Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu had chosen, having a headache as he grabbed the ancient scrolls which Qin Mu had chosen. The ancient scrolls which Ling Yuxiu had chosen were divine arts of sword skills. Other than that they were spells. Other than sunset sword skill which Qin Mu had handed up, which was considered normal, the other two writings got him stumped. These two writings, one was called Soul Guide, the other one was called Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes Command. Any divine arts of sword skills and spells had their fundamental techniques to adhere to. This was so called to comprehend by analogy, to draw inferences about other cases from one instance. With Chancellor Ba Shan's incomparably dense knowledge and experience, he was able to give them pointers. Only these two ancient scrolls that Qin Mu had chosen were the unpopular ones among the unpopular ones. Normally, even if Chancellor Ba Shan entered Floor of Heavenly Records, even if he happened to see these unpopular spells, he would only take a look at them and put them aside, not bothering with reading them at all. It was really forcing him to explain it. In the eyes of his realm, the power of the spells of Soul Guide and Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes Command wasn't strong enough and nothing in them could make one's eyes light up. He really didn't know what's Qin Mu's intention to pick out these two spells. Chancellor Ba Shan sat on the bull's back and threw the two ancient scrolls to Qin Mu to let him study them himself. He then explained the scrolls which Ling Yuxiu had brought out from Floor of Heavenly Records. Ling Yuxiu was a child of the imperial family, therefore, she could enter the second level in Floor of Heavenly Records. This time she brought out a profound Dao spell of Dao sect called Azure Heaven Lightning Lure from the floor. Just this name alone was more orthodox than Soul Lure and Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes Command. It was the orthodox lightning spell of the Taoist school, thus it was naturally a fully justified reputation. Chancellor Ba Shan's explanation was also clear and logical. Many parts that were hard to understand became clear to Ling Yuxiu under his advice. Qin Mu was also captivated from listening. Suddenly, he thought that he could reference Azure Heaven Lightning Lure and Thunderclap 8 strikes with each other, and maybe he could gain an unimaginable power. His train of thought started to spread out, and he didn't hear what Chancellor Ba Shan was saying, sinking into his own calculations. Ling Yuxiu consulted Chancellor Ba Shan on some parts that she didn't understand and immediately tried them out. A series of Dharma methods were executed, and suddenly a bolt came out from the blue and struck the surface of the river, exploding out a few river fishes that were 3 yards long. Ling Yuxiu was surprised and delighted. She was very satisfied. Chancellor Ba Shan shook his head and said, "Princess, your foundation is still too lacking. You didn't practice your fundamentals properly. This power of Azure Heaven Lightning Lure is not just like this." He sealed his divine treasures and only left his spirit embryo and 5 elements divine treasures open, placing him in the same realm as Ling Yuxiu. He then executed Azure Heaven Lightning Lure, putting his index finger and middle finger together. It was as if his fingers were like a thread threading through formless needles in front of his face. Lightning flashed and thunder instantly exploded on the river surface. Lightning struck everywhere he pointed and was extremely sharp. In an instant, over a few dozens bolts of lightning struck down. The river surface turned white, and everywhere were huge fishes that were blown away. Ling Yuxiu was completely won over by Chancellor Ba Shan. It was also Chancellor Ba Shan's first time cultivating this Azure Heaven Lightning Lure, but with one move, he already executed it extremely skillfully, making people exclaim in admiration. Chancellor Ba Shan smiled. "The technique of your imperial family, 9 Dragons Monarch technique, is fierce and overbearing. If your foundation is solid enough, the Azure Heaven Lightning Lure that you execute will only be stronger than mine. 7th Princess, I won't be teaching you other techniques these few days. I'll help you strengthen your foundation." Ling Yuxiu immediately agreed. Chancellor Ba Shan himself was a cult master level existence who had vast knowledge and experience. In addition to that, he had also experienced the reform of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and stayed in the sacred ground of Imperial College to comprehend the techniques, skills, and divine arts of all big sects and cults. With such a deep knowledge and experience, he was already a top-notch expert in Eternal Peace Empire. The Green Bull rushed towards the borders while Chancellor Ba Shan propagated his Tao and went through the ancient scrolls they had brought out from floor of heavenly records. After 2 to 3 days, they were finally nearing Qingmen Pass. Qingmen Pass was the common border between Eternal Peace Empire and Barbarian D Empire. It was also the common border between Great Ruins and Barbarian D Empire. Over here, there were over 30 miles between Qingmen Pass and the border station of Barbarian D Empire. However, in this middle of 30 miles of land, there was a forest that spanned over several miles. This forest had extended from Great Ruins and was part of Great Ruins territory. Whenever the darkness invaded at night, it would separate both of these majestic passes. Great Ruins became the natural barrier between Barbarian D Empire and Eternal Peace Empire. The armies on both sides wanted to secretly assault each other, yet they couldn't do so under the cover of the night. They could only attack each other in the day, therefore the war was in a deadlock. The officers and soldiers of both borders referred to this piece of Great Ruins as Duck's Tongue. Qin Mu and the rest entered Qingmen Pass, and Chancellor Ba Shan handed over the customs clearance card to the frontier defense. The soldier counted the number of people when he suddenly saw Qin Mu and was slightly stunned. He immediately ran into the city. Everyone was puzzled, and Chancellor Ba Shan asked in bewilderment, "Did you cause trouble here?" The Green Bull was delighted in his misfortune. "Cause any trouble? Old master, have you forgotten? Your junior brother is an abandoned person of Great Ruins. The soldiers of the border station have received an oracle to kill any abandoned people of Great Ruins who dare to enter Eternal Peace. I reckon your junior brother is going to be beheaded or be sold as a slave." Chancellor Ba Shan frowned, and a moment later, the clanking sounds of armor came from the city along with a deep and resounding voice. "Divine Physician, where's Divine Physician Qin?" A total of 100 soldiers escorted an old white-haired general out from the border station and sized up the bunch of people. "Which one of you is Divine Physician Qin?" Qin Mu smiled. "I'm right here. I don't deserve to be called Divine Physician. This general." Whoosh! In front of him, these soldiers all knelt down, and that old general also knelt down on one knee with his both hands cupped above his head. "The medicine which Divine Physician Qin gave to us has saved countless lives of our soldiers of the border station. I received orders to guard the border station here, and couldn't have the chance to go to the capital city to thank Divine Physician Qin. Never would I expect Divine Physician Qin to come visit us personally. Please receive a bow from all of us soldiers." Qin Mu immediately raised his hands and said, "Get up, General. Is my pure yang refining bug pill effective?" That General Bien stood up and his white hair swayed as he nodded. "Effective. Now the shaman of Barbarian D Empire can't harm the soldiers of our army with their spells anymore. There's no one in our whole Qingmen Pass who doesn't thank the benevolence of Divine Physician. That's too weighty, it's only a very slight effort." Qin Mu smiled. "General Bien, this here is Chancellor Ba Shan from our Imperial College. This here is the 7th Princess." Bien Jinyun said, "I've heard of Chancellor Ba Shan's name, and now seeing him, he is indeed extraordinary. As for the 7th Princess," his expression sank slightly and sneered. "What's the princess doing here in our remote and desolate place? If anything happens to her, who's going to be responsible?" Chancellor Ba Shan smiled. "I'm the one who wanted to bring them out for an experience. May General Bien make things easy for us." Bien Jinyun's expression softened and said reluctantly, "For Divine Physician's sake, I'll make this easy for you. Chancellor is planning to bring them to our Qingmen Pass for experience." Chancellor Ba Shan shook his head. "It's Barbarian D Empire." Bien Jinyun jumped in shock and cried out, "You are trying to enter Barbarian D Empire? Are you trying to die? Now that the two countries are warring, you will definitely be killed if you barge over now. Furthermore, the princess is with you. If anything happens to her, the entire Imperial College would be executed." Chancellor Ba Shan smiled. "With me around, nothing will happen. I have my own eyes and ears in Barbarian D Empire as well." Bien Jinyun sneered. "Why do I care so much? That's your Imperial College's matter. Even if something happens, your Imperial College would have to take responsibility. Divine Physician Qin, please enter." Ling Yuxiu was worried. Chancellor Ba Shan had told them that it was a training beyond the Great Wall, and she had originally thought they were going to the borders. Never did she expect that Chancellor Ba Shan was actually wanting to go to Barbarian D Empire. However, she was always daring and had even followed Qin Feiyue to great ruins. Now hearing that they were going to go to Barbarian D Empire, she was slightly worried, but her excitement was greater. When the night came, there was a banquet held in General's Manor as Bien Jinyun led his troops to invite Qin Mu to the banquet. Chancellor Ba Shan and the rest were also invited, but they were just to accompany him. In the next morning, Bien Jinyun sent them off and offered Qin Mu a tray of gold ingots. Barbarian D Empire don't acknowledge Great Abundance coin and only acknowledge gold ingots, Divine Physician? Take them as your travel expenses. Qin Mu gave his thanks. Everyone got up on the back of the bull, and the green bull walked out of the pass. They passed through Duck's Tongue of Great Ruins and went beyond the Great Wall. They could see dust from all around, and within the dust, there were a few weird beasts with bone spikes growing on their heads sprinting over. There were tall and steady generals of a different tribe riding on the weird beasts, and they shouted loudly, "Issa!" Chancellor Ba Shan raised his feet and stood on top of the green bull's huge head. With both of his feet stepping on the bull's horns, he immediately pulled open his sable's fur overcoat. The generals of the different tribes saw the tattoos on his chest and immediately shouted to halt the strange beasts under their hips. They then sat on the backs of the beasts to salute him before turning the beasts around and whooshing away. Chancellor Ba Shan covered his chest and came down from the bull's head. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu were slightly puzzled and didn't know why these barbarians would salute him when they saw him. When they came to the border station of Barbarian D Empire, there was also a tall and huge city with tight security measures. Chancellor Ba Shan brought everyone to the bottom of the pass and the city gate opened up. Numerous barbarian soldiers lined up in 2 rows and welcomed them into the pass respectfully. The 2 of them became even more puzzled. At this time, a general guarding the border station of Barbarian D Empire walked over and laughed out loud. "The matchless Marshal Khan in the whole world, the king of our prairie, it has been a long time since I saw you. Ever since your distinguished self became an official of Eternal Peace Empire, the reputation of Marshal Khan has already borne an unbearable stink." Chancellor Ba Shan laughed out loudly. "I myself wasn't a person of the prairie. I had merely defeated your warriors on the prairie and got honored as Marshal Khan." Marshal Khan? Qin Mu and the rest looked at one another, and Hu Linger asked in bewilderment. Chancellor, what's the tattoo on your chest? Why did they have to salute you instead when they saw you? Chancellor Bashan opened up his shirt and smiled. Take a look. Qin Mu looked over and saw a queer skull that was fully covered in bone spikes tattooed on his chest. This is the tattoo of Barbarian D Empire's Khans. It has been blessed by the Grand Shaman of Barbarian D Empire's sacred ground, and not everyone has it. Chancellor Bashan covered his chest and said, I'm originally a Khan of Barbarian D Empire. Back then I had followed teacher to travel around and we came to Barbarian D Empire. We had heard that Barbarian D Empire revered military skills, therefore, I had battled the strong practitioners on the prairie, winning all 100 battles without being defeated. Thus I was honored as Martial Khan. Martial Khan means Martial Emperor in Eternal Peace Empire's terms. Martial Emperor? Senior brother Bashan actually had such a resounding reputation in Barbarian D Empire. Qin Mu was secretly speechless. Ling Yuxiu immediately said, Teacher, you're an expert of the battle technique school? Chancellor Bashan nodded his head and gave a smile. Back then I followed my teacher to cultivate knife skills. However, after teacher had gone missing, it had been a long time since my knife skills had any improvement. It was then Imperial Preceptor had pushed for a reform, therefore, I came to Eternal Peace to learn spells and sword skills, trying to take advice from him to break my bottleneck. However, as a matter of fact, my strongest skill is battle spell, not battle technique. Ling Yuxiu's heart shook slightly. Along this journey, Chancellor Bashan had taught them paths, skills, and divine arts, explaining the ancient scrolls one by one to them. This made her think that Chancellor Bashan was most proficient in spells and sword skills. Never did she expect he was actually a disciple of Battle Technique School. How unexpected! What was even more unexpected was that Chancellor Bashan actually had the title of Martial Emperor in Barbarian D Empire, and was greatly respected. This was something of the highest honor for a foreign tribe in Barbarian D Empire. That barbarian general led everyone into the pass and asked, Why did Martial Emperor come back to our empire? Ever since you gave yourself up to Eternal Peace Empire, all the heroes in our prairie have despised you, and have wanted to take back the title of Martial Emperor. Chancellor Bashan smiled. The scholars of our Imperial College want to walk down the path I had taken back then and meet the young heroes of the shaman cult. That barbarian general trembled slightly and sneered as he looked at Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu. Them? Seriously? Ling Yuxiu was excited and shot a glance at Qin Mu, snickering. We're going to meet the young heroes of the shaman cult. Chancellor Bashan said. Just them. Coming here this time, I plan to visit the sacred ground of the prairie, Roland's Golden Palace, to block the gate of Roland's Golden Palace by sitting there. Back then, I had blocked the gate of Roland's Golden Palace, which was how I had gotten the title of Martial Emperor. The muscles at corners of the barbarian general's eyes twitched furiously as he sneered. Back then Heaven Khan was around. That was why you could succeed in blocking the gate. How's your ability compared to Heaven Khan now? Even though I'm not as good as him, there isn't much difference between us now. The expression of that barbarian general sank and shouted to a soldier, Release the Hawk Eagle Wolf to inform Roland's Golden Palace, Martial Khan is here to block the gate. That barbarian general immediately shouted, and a moment later, a huge wolf with wings rose into the sky and flapped its wings into the deeper parts of the prairie. That barbarian general looked at Chancellor Bashan and bowed. Martial Khan, it's a bumpy road ahead, please. Chancellor Bashan laughed loudly and brought Qin Mu and the rest into the prairie. Ling Yuxiu said, Teacher Bashan, who is the Heaven Khan that barbarian mentioned? My teacher, Heaven Knife. Chancellor Bashan looked up to the sky and said calmly, Back then he brought me to Roland's Golden Palace to block the gate and was honored as Heaven Emperor beyond the Great Wall. Grandpa Butcher was actually so impressive in the past. Qin Mu was shocked. Butcher had a short fuse and always looked angry. When he went to Grandma Temple to sell meat, he looked like a fierce-looking fiend with the 2 kitchen knives in his hands and scared many of the young maidens in Great Ruins to tears. He actually had the title of Heaven Khan in the past? Heaven Khan meant Heaven Emperor, and how awe-inspiring was the title of Heaven Emperor? How could it only be used to scare young maidens to tears? Qin Mu simply couldn't imagine how domineering Butcher was in the past. Hu Linger muttered, Martial Emperor beyond the Great Wall. Heaven Emperor beyond the Great Wall. How impressive. The prairie was vast but sparsely populated. Sometimes they walked half a day and couldn't even see a village. They looked up at the cloudless sky. The greenness of the prairie merged together with the blue color of the sky. The beautiful scenery made them feel fresh. Chancellor Ba Shan looked boorish, tall and extremely sturdy, slightly similar to the man on the prairie. If they passed a village, the herdsmen would come forward to propose a toast. They were all very warm-hearted. Eternal Peace Empire has 3 big sections. The number 1 sect of the Righteous Path, Tao sect. The number 1 sect of Buddhism, Great Thunderclap Monastery. The number 1 cult of the Devil Path, Heavenly Devil Cult. When night fell, they came to a village to settle down. Chancellor Ba Shan sat beside a bonfire and said, "However, on the prairie, the number 1 sacred ground is Roland's Golden Palace, the biggest shaman cult. Grand Shaman of Roland's Golden Palace has an extremely high position on the prairie, and the Khans on the prairie were all conferred monarchical power by Grand Shaman of Roland's Golden Palace. If the old Khan is dead and his son wants to succeed him, the son will have to go to Roland's Golden Palace to request Grand Shaman to confer monarchical power to him." Ling Yuxiu said, "Our Eternal Peace Empire was also like this in the past. My father mentioned before that Eternal Peace Empire was only 10% of what it is now and was a vassal state of Longevity sect. Back then my Ling family wasn't the imperial family as well. It was then the sect master of Longevity sect got tired of the emperor and deposed him, choosing my ancestor as the emperor and changing the dynasty directly. After that, my Ling family made great efforts to build a strong empire and secretly expanded ourselves, finally getting rid of Longevity sect. That's how we grew greater." Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He didn't know that Eternal Peace Empire had such a past. Chancellor Ba Shan drank his wine and put down his wine gourd. There were over 30 small countries in the past on the current national land of Eternal Peace Empire. Every country had their emperor and was controlled by a sect. These sects were supported by these countries. The emperors had to present tribute every year to these sections. Now the sects have become vassals of the empire. It's natural for these sects to be unhappy, therefore they would rebel when they have the chance. There are also quite a lot sects beyond the Great Wall, but the biggest and stronger power is Roland's Golden Palace. The Khans of all the countries acknowledge allegiance to the Golden Palace, and there is completely no way for the other sects to contend against the Golden Palace." Qin Mu said, "Senior brother, how's the power of Roland's Golden Palace compared to the 3 big sects?" Chancellor Ba Shan said calmly, "They're about the same." Qin Mu's eyes lighted up. Blocking the gate of Roland's Golden Palace was equivalent to blocking the mountain gate of Tao sect and the mountain gate of Great Thunderclap Monastery. One could well imagine the difficulty. However, this time going to Roland's Golden Palace isn't to block the gate but to steal something. Chancellor Ba Shan chuckled. "Junior brother princess, you two will block the gate while I go into the palace to steal something. When I get my hands on it, we'll leave immediately. Princess, I will increase the training on your fundamentals these few days. This is to allow you to unleash the power of 9 Dragons Monarch technique to its maximum." Ling Yuxiu was slightly worried. The next day, they continued on their journey, but this time Chancellor Ba Shan made them travel on feet. As they walked, he made Ling Yuxiu execute the technique she had learned. Chancellor Ba Shan had a sharp eye, and he could know Ling Yuxiu's inadequacies just with one look. He then instructed Ling Yuxiu to correct herself and practiced it over and over again. It was the first time for Ling Yuxiu to suffer so much. Even though she was astute and capable in the past, that was the result of the imperial family's education. Yet in regards to martial arts and divine arts, she wasn't as hardworking. This time Chancellor Ba Shan brought her to polish up her fundamentals and made her train assiduously, so that she was able to unleash the power of 9 Dragons Monarch technique. 9 Dragons Monarch technique was the best technique of the imperial family. After the improvements from the imperial court and occupying the location where the 9 dragons gathered, the chi of the 9 dragons lingering in the imperial city had a miraculous effect which allowed the children of the imperial family like Ling Yuxiu to cultivate this technique twice as fast. Ling Yuxiu's vital chi cultivation wasn't low. It's only her fundamentals that were not solid. Over 10 days later, she was polished by Chancellor Ba Shan into a totally different person with her abilities improving rapidly. 9 Dragons Monarch technique itself is a technique for the spell divine arts. And the strongest point of spell divine arts lies in explosive strength. For example, flame divine art. Chancellor Ba Shan stretched out his hand and pointed. shooting out a fireball which flew over 300 miles. That fireball was only the size of a fist, but it suddenly exploded and the blazing flames expanded a few thousand times, and the prairie within a radius of dozens of yards was destroyed by the explosion. The ground was burnt black, and there were even signs of rocks melting in the heart of the explosion. Nine Dragons Monarch technique has an extremely deep attainment in the path of spells. Some people said that Spells School and Battle Technique School are two extreme schools, but actually there isn't much extremity between spells and battle techniques. Instead, they could be interoperate. Chancellor Ba Shan borrowed the big iron hammer from Ling Yuxiu and said, "Princess, look carefully. Junior brother, come and face me." Qin Mu's vital qi burst forth and his junior protector sword flew out of its sheath, stabbing towards Chancellor Ba Shan. Chancellor Ba Shan swung the hammer, which was the big hammer Qin Mu gave to Ling Yuxiu. At this moment, blazing flames actually sprouted out from the head of the hammer and collided with Junior Protector Sword. Boom! A violent explosion burst forth from the head of the hammer, blowing Junior Protector Sword away. Flames raged around Chancellor Ba Shan, and only the patch of grass which he was standing on was still green. Ling Yuxiu was shocked and immediately saw the crucial points. Chancellor Ba Shan had hidden the Flame Divine Art inside the big hammer, and when Junior Protector Sword got into contact with it, the Flame Divine Art burst forth and blew away Junior Protector Sword. Qin Mu used his vital qi thread to sweep back his Junior Protector Sword. With the sword light flashing, he attacked Chancellor Ba Shan. The distance between the two of them was slightly far and Chancellor Ba Shan swung the iron hammer up and down, with every blow perfectly blocking Junior Protector Sword. Rumbling explosions followed after every strike and the heat waves surged forth astonishingly. Ling Yuxiu's heart was thumping wildly. Chancellor Ba Shan was showing her a way of battling that she had never thought of before, to perfectly merge battle techniques and spells together and becoming incomparably overbearing. Qin Mu's Junior Protector Sword was blown away time and time again as he admired him endlessly. Chancellor Ba Shan first learned from Butcher the Heaven Knife before going into Eternal Peace Empire to learn spells. That finally brought him down a path of his own. By executing spells and battle techniques in this way, Chancellor Ba Shan had also pointed out a path for Qin Mu. The title of Martial Emperor was well deserved. Merging two different kinds of cultivation methods into one, even Chancellor Ba Shan's abilities were inferior to Butcher. He could already be considered as a master of this generation. Chancellor Ba Shan pulled back his hammer skills and returned the red-hot hammer to Ling Yuxiu and said, "I couldn't reach the extreme realm by cultivating knife like my teacher, therefore, I could only take an alternate path. Teacher's knife could split the heaven and earth. He can cut down the heavens and destroy all divine arts with one knife, but I can't do it. That's why I had taken the chance to enter Imperial College during Imperial Preceptor's reform to learn spells divine arts, trying to make a breakthrough. Princess Yuxiu, you have the foundation of Nine Dragons Monarch technique. It's the best for you to take my path." Ling Yuxiu had completely accepted it willingly and consulted seriously. She had no more complaint even when Chancellor Ba Shan made her practice her fundamentals diligently. Qin Mu also couldn't resist the temptation and consulted Chancellor Ba Shan. Chancellor Ba Shan naturally said everything that he knew and there was no end to his talking. Even Hu Linger and the green cow had got quite some benefits. As they went deeper into the prairie, they practiced the fusion between battle technique and spells. Ling Yuxiu had already preliminary grasped the technique of fusing battle techniques and spells. Qin Mu and her fought fiercely and their entire bodies broke out in sweat. When it was time to rest, Qin Mu took out his handkerchief to wipe his sweat and Ling Yuxiu smiled. "Imperial Academician, let me help you wipe." After she said this, she snatched the handkerchief over and dabbed it on his forehead. Qin Mu also saw sweats on her forehead. "You're also sweating. Let me help you wipe as well." Ling Yuxiu handed the handkerchief over to him. Suddenly Chancellor Ba Shan's expression changed hugely and he raised his hands to push forward while shouting, "Heavenly Spirit's Escarpment."